great power. In fact, at a time when everyone is paying attention to the central figure, who has accomplished many feats, they are protected by a hero in the shadows. An unexpected fantasy story about a boy who became the strongest. The shadow hero was carrying an unbearable burden on his shoulders, slowly collapsing. For the sake of his self-satisfaction, he will remain unnoticed by anyone, all for the sake of people. It all started in the gym of the Third State University. It was in it that the soft sounds were heard. A guy in a school uniform tried to catch something, but couldn't, which made him hurt. The student's name was Sakuya. He was a freshman at the Third State University for Adventurers. What the guy was trying to catch was a weapon. His hands hurt when he was hit, so he tried to take the pain away. Suddenly, a sword was pointed at him. The girl with golden hair, frowning slightly, pointed a wooden sword at him. She wanted him to get up as soon as possible. Sakuya stood up and asked the girl to be gentle with him. His hands still hurt, but he tried to smile, when suddenly, the angry girl, without regret, hit the guy. Then after that, still frowning, she said sheepishly, "The girl will not become as strong as she wants. Therefore, she will not feel sorry for the guy and be softer with him." The guy understood what she wanted to say. Therefore, with a fake smile, he walked back towards the fallen wooden sword. The girl with golden hair was in her third year at his university. The guy looked at the confused girl who was trying to look calm. Her name was Fuyuna. Suddenly, the guy's gaze went down from Fuyuna's face and stayed there for a few seconds. The girl was the owner of large forms, and she was also the strongest student in the academy. Fuyuna noticed Sakuya's lingering gaze on her. She immediately stabbed him with a wooden sword, forcing him to stop looking at her. Then turning away, Fuyuna wanted to continue sparring from the beginning. Sakuya, rubbing his sore spot, could only accept the girl's offer to fight. It was his special training session with her. The guy and the girl got into their position. Fuyuna gave the guy a sign that he could start his attack. Sakuya exhaled and immediately headed towards the girl. The guy raised his sword above him to attack Fuyuna. Then, swinging his wooden sword, he aimed at Fuyuna. Then she was able to defend herself from his blow by attacking him back. The guy could barely hold his sword in his hands. Sakuya tensed up and directed his attacks at the girl again, but she easily overcame his blows, not even letting him touch her with his wooden sword. Sakuya was pushed back by her pressure for a moment. The girl began to swing her sword in his direction. The guy looked at his opponent with a serious look. After analyzing the girl's movements, he realized that she would use a swing from the right corner to attack him from the left 3 times in a row. That's exactly what happened. The guy easily defended himself from her attack from the right corner. Then a blow from the left corner was directed at him. Sakuya was also able to easily defend himself with his sword from the blow. The girl tensed up, so she aimed a decisive blow at the guy, aiming straight at the gap between the eyes. However, Fuyuna's swift strike failed. The guy instantly defended himself with his wooden sword, placing it at the intended place of impact. Sakuya let out a relaxed sigh. It was difficult to deceive him, so he was able to easily defend against her attack. Then, looking up, the guy noticed the girl's open palm in front of him. Fuyuna, with a sweet smile, gave the guy her palm so that he could lift himself up with her help. Sakuya didn't have any particularly cool skills, but he was in this place for another reason. Namely, because of its peculiarity. The guy accepted the girl's help and grabbed her hand. Fuyuna was a little unhappy that the guy was able to block her attack. Sakuya had a long story about getting into the academy. 5 months ago, a huge gloomy castle towered in the dark, dense forest. The sky was dark, with only lightning flashing in it. Inside the castle lay the immobilized bodies of people. It could be seen from them that a powerful battle had recently taken place. The man looked at the people with horror. These were his acquaintances. Their names were Dante, Schwartz, Melanie, and Alavis. He realized that the Demon King must definitely be defeated. The remaining members of the team stared intently towards the throne. On the other hand, a girl with demon horns looked at the adventurer team with arrogance. This was the 72nd servant of the Demon King named Astarte. Next to her was a creature in the form of a huge black smoke. Astarte had a throne behind her. There was a muscular tall man sitting on it. It was the Demon King. He laughed angrily and noticed that the warriors who arrived before the current team were bigger than them. But the winner Sakuya was calm and confident of victory. However, this did not apply to the other members of his team. The saint named Melanie was tense, not stopping. She was reciting a spell. And the hero Alavis was worried and scared of their current situation. The team of heroes and the team of demons looked at each other. There was a moment of silence between them. Suddenly, Sakuya, the victor, began to cast spells. He was hoping for the stone plate technique. If it works, then they will succeed. Sakuya would continue to cast the spell. He needed to buy time to fully activate the technique. Saint Melanie tried her best. Sweating, she stubbornly continued to use her holy magic. Suddenly, Sakuya looked at his remaining companion, the hero Alavis. He was thoughtful. Alavis was scared of the whole situation. He understood that their strength was small. Therefore, the man let go of his steel sword from his hand. A fallen sword rang loudly in the silence. The man looked at him darkly and fearfully. Saint Melanie was angry at the hero's act. She looked at Alavis in disbelief. The Demon King was bored, but he was interested in the picture he saw. The hero Alavis, looking gloomy, called out to the Demon King. The man, scared and tense, informed his enemy that he was giving up. Alavis raised both his hands at his words. Then he continued to speak. Alavis told the Demon King that he would reveal the weaknesses of humans. The man wanted to become a tool to talk to the prisoners of the enemy. It was all for the sake of the Demon King sparing their lives. Then the hero Alavis imploringly asked the Demon King to spare his and Melanie's lives, to which the Demon King called him a stupid man. Then the Demon King instantly pierced Astarte with his huge sword, which made Alavis more scared. This was Astarte's special ability. She absorbed all the damage done to the Demon King. The demonic girl, a servant of the Demon King, began to recite a spell in a gloomy voice. To defeat her, it was necessary to deal as much damage as would exceed the limit of her abilities. But no group of warriors was capable of this. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared on the ceiling of the castle. Astarte continued to cast the spell. What was even worse for the opponents of the Demon King, she could splash out the accumulated damage, converting it into attack power. Numerous magic circles formed on the ceiling. Gradually, steel swords began to come out of them. It was a powerful attack, an attack that can easily penetrate human armor. All the weapons that originated from the magic circle came down from the ceiling. The swords were pointed warningly towards the hero, Alavis. Cold sweat dripped from Alavis's forehead, and the man looked at the demons with a frightened look from the swords he saw. Astarte continued to look at the man with arrogance. From her pressure, the hero Alavis fell to the floor with a scream. He closed his eyes and wanted the girl to stop looking at him. While all this was happening, the rest of the team stood silently behind the hero Alavis. Sakuya was praised by the man for his good performance. Sakuya thought that his comrade was not only a talented warrior, but also an excellent actor. The stone plate technique has been activated. The Demon King, seeing the scene with Alavis's fright, burst out laughing loudly. He did not consider the man a hero, because he was too clumsy and timid. Then, an evil grin appeared on the Demon King's face. He wanted Alavis to become his spell-working doll. But suddenly there was a voice that disagreed with this. It was Sakuya's winner. He informed his enemy that he would be eliminated. The man gripped the stone plate and stood in an attack stance. Then, an instantaneous huge number of swords headed towards the Demon King and attacked him, thereby causing the Demon King to look at his injury with shock. Saint Melanie looked towards Sakuya with delight and relief. She was glad of what had happened. Alavis had a different expression. With anger and hatred, he turned towards his companion. Sakuya didn't pay attention to it. The black-haired man, using the technique of a stone plate, caught Astarte, the servant of demons, in it. The sweet girl Astarte was caught. After seeing Sakuya's actions, the Demon King broke his throne with his own hands out of anger. The demon was angry because Astarte was his property. Sakuya only grinned at this, looking at the enemy with a challenge. The Demon King activated his magic in an angry state. A ray appeared on the man's finger. It was magic. But Sakuya did not stay in place at the same moment he called his comrades. Alavis picked up his steel sword from the floor and headed towards the demon. Saint Melanie has activated cleansing magic. The hero Alavis heading towards the Demon King, shouted that he would be eliminated. The man then jumped up and attacked the Demon King with his sword, thus defeating him. Slowly, the Demon King began to disappear. Alavas happily informed his comrades about the elimination of their enemy. Saint Melanie was glad to win. She thanked Sakuya for his help. It all happened thanks to him. To which Alavas, angered by the girl's actions, turned away. The Demon King was in his right mind. He growled menacingly towards the warriors. The man was angry that Sakuya was able to do this, namely, to seal Astarte, his servant, in order to destroy him, the Demon King. The angry demon began to disappear. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared. Someone called out to Sakuya. It turns out that the Demon King used his last strength to attack the man. He will always remember his name. A stream of dark power began to flow towards Sakuya. The dark force was in the form of a vine. They rapidly began to envelop Sakuya. The Demon King informed the man that he would be sealed forever in the corridor of death. Melanie ran towards the black-haired man. He was completely enveloped in the dark force. Only his palm remained outside. Saint Melanie desperately wanted to grab his palm, but it instantly disappeared into the vines of dark power. The girl, falling to her knees, looked with grief and despair at the disappearing ball of dark power. The last words of the Demon King sounded. Now he did not consider himself a loser. Soon, the Demon King was completely destroyed. There was only silence in the castle. The hero Alavas was sitting dumbfounded on the floor. All that remained of the Demon King was a dilapidated throne and his dark sword. Dark power hovered around the sword of the Demon King. In some place, the path led towards the dark wilderness of the building, and outside there was a tree with green foliage and fruits. The man tasted the peaches. He happily noticed their taste. The peaches were good. However, Sakuya was concerned about survival in his new place. Suddenly, Sakuya's attention was attracted by something. A huge number of monsters and demons appeared in the depths of the corridor. Sakuya found out that someone lived in the corridor of death after all. The man calmly began to draw his sword from its scabbard. Then he called out to Astarte. Instantly, a girl, a servant of the Demon King, appeared beside him. The man invited the girl to walk through hell together. Then they headed towards the monsters. Immediately, a crowd of monsters ran towards them. The man was a little annoyed. Such incredible crowds infuriated him. Among his opponents were all demons, from the lowest rank, the lowest demons, to the highest, the devil. Immediately, Sakuya ordered his companion to head towards the demons. The girl quickly rushed towards them. The demons were staring furiously in her direction. They were already ready to attack her. However, Astarte was calm. Instantly, the entire crowd of demons was attacked by a huge number of swords. The crowd was completely eliminated, and the swords slowly began to disappear. Only Astarte looked at them calmly. Sakuya understood the favoritism of the Demon King towards Astarte. After all, Sakuya can go anywhere with her. Then Sakuya and Astarte calmly left the corridor. Suddenly, the man noticed something. The King of the Seven Sins appeared before him. The king had the appearance of a huge fly, and his horde of insects flew near him. Sakuya recently read about him. The enemy that appeared in front of them was one of the 70 pillars of the Demon King. The man was very ill. Suddenly, Astarte began to cast a spell. Soon, the King of the Seven Sins fell under the attack of a demoness. The demonic fly has been eliminated. The magic of Astarte in the form of swords began to disappear. Sakuya was surprised that he was still alive. It turns out that due to Astarte's summoning, the damage inflicted on the guy was blocked. The man looked at the liquidated body of the King of the Seven Sins. Then he turned to the girl and thanked her for her help. The girl calmly accepted his gratitude. Then the guy and the girl headed towards the exit from the corridor. Soon, a room appeared in front of him, in which a magic circle was brightly lit. The guy thought that it was a portal back. He joined it. Astartes and Sakuya ended up in the Demon King's bedroom. They finally came back. The corridor was too long. The man was completely battered by the circumstances. Sakuya called out to his companions, but they were not there. He thought he would find them somewhere. However, the man did not even find their bodies. Perhaps his teammates were able to both survive. The memory of them lingered in him. Sakuya bent down and stood up. In that case, he had to find his companions in the human world. But at the moment, the man only wanted to sleep. He apologized to the Astartes and ordered her to guard him. The next day, yawning, the guy finally woke up. He greeted Astarte. When Sakuya suddenly noticed the difference in their height, the demon girl became taller. But the man accepted it and didn't think about it for a long time. After all, the demon world was strange. Then the guy and the girl went to the exit of the castle. The man wanted to visit the world of people. To begin with, Sakuya summoned a horse for himself. It was early morning. Dawn had come. The rising sun illuminated everything with its warm rays. Sakuya happily looked into the distance at the sunrise. He hadn't been in these parts for a long time. Soon after seeing the sunrise, the guy thought about going back. Sakuya was heading to the royal capital of Lindehof. After a while, the man on horseback continued his journey, heading to the capital. Suddenly he heard a sound. His gaze was drawn towards the noise. A vast view of the city appeared in front of Sakuya. The city was buzzing with unprecedented life. The guy thought that some kind of holiday was taking place in it. He was relieved by this, because peaceful holidays were a good sign. The guy continued to ride the horse. Sakuya soon found himself in the center of the city. Different views appeared before him. The hum of the lively crowd came from all directions. Only the guy was not interested. He continued to look for his comrades, Alavis and Melanie. Sakuya knew that they were from this country where he was. Suddenly, a hungry rumbling sounded from the guy's stomach, causing the guy to stop for a moment. The guy began to hear pleasant and fragrant smells of food from the counter. Therefore, Sakuya, touching his stomach, decided to get enough first. Soon the guy was enjoying the food he had bought. The food was delicious. He bought himself 2 whole bags of food from the counter. Soon Sakuya ate all the food. He was full. Then the guy threw out the bags left over from the food. Suddenly the guy thought about the holiday. He was wondering in honor of what, in general, it was held. Therefore, he approached an elderly lady and asked her about the holiday. The woman smiled pleasantly at Sakuya. Then she explained to him that the celebration was in honor of the wedding. The wedding was between the hero Alavis and the Holy Virgin Melanie. The guy was shocked by her words. Sakuya was stunned because of the wedding. However, he immediately let out a sigh of relief and smiled. The guy was glad that his teammates were both alive. Then he turned back to the old lady. The black-haired guy wanted to know how many days had passed since defeating the Demon King. It turned out that a whole 100 days had passed since his imprisonment in the corridor. Sakuya was surprised by the time passed. Suddenly, an elderly lady anxiously informed him that this had happened even before the conversations before the ceremony. Everyone said that at that time, the Holy Virgin was unwell because they had lost their dear comrade. Sakuya was silent for a moment. He accepted the news awkwardly. The guy realized that, in this case, no one had informed his comrades about his return. When suddenly his interlocutor continued the conversation. The woman smiled happily at the guy. She noticed that at the moment of talking about Alavis and Melanie, her interlocutor had a happy expression. It was as if he was their close friend. Sakuya awkwardly justified himself to her. Then the guy thanked the old lady and said goodbye to her. Sakuya continued walking through the streets of the capital. He decided to make it a secret that he was once a member of a group of heroes. The guy was walking confidently somewhere. Sakuya gave himself the title of unsung hero. That was his way of life. At the moment of a great feat, people usually applaud the hero standing in the center. Sakuya is hiding from the applause, and he performs his exploits in the shadows. To be honest, he liked this kind of work. Without harming anyone, he did this job, so that people can live every day the way they want. Sakuya strove to work without being noticed. Besides, it was time for him to show up to his comrades who helped the hero and the Holy Virgin in destroying the Demon King. The guy remembered the faces of his comrades. It is unlikely that they would publicly declare that Sakuya was their comrade. Then the guy was attracted by the flower counter. He walked up to him. The guy asked the saleswoman for a bouquet. As a true comrade, he wanted to at least let them know that he had returned. And he also wanted to congratulate them on their wedding. Sakuya, having received a small bouquet of flowers, went somewhere again. There was a huge queue of people in front of the luxurious palace. All of them expected to see the wedding ceremony. Sakuya was surprised by the impressive length of the queue. Apparently, he will have to wait a long time for the moment when he enters the palace. The townspeople standing in line and even the knights were worried about the guy's appearance. Sakuya knew that because of his shabby clothes, everyone would look at him. But there was nothing he could do. All the clothing stores were closed. But even so, he was happy. The guy, waiting in line, looked into the distance. He noticed the beauty of the day's weather. Suddenly, a girl called out to Sakuya, thereby attracting his attention to her. A black-haired girl with a ponytail turned to the guy. She noticed that he looked very happy. For a moment, the guy's mind was lost because of the beauty of an unfamiliar girl. But he immediately came to his senses. The guy was loyal only to Astarte. It turns out that the girl turned to him because he looked happy and contented. For a moment, she felt envious. The guy greeted the girl. His companion came to meet him. Suddenly, the black-haired girl asked for forgiveness. Despite the fact that this was their first meeting, the girl behaved inappropriately by not introducing herself to him. The black-haired girl wanted to tell her name to the guy, but he stopped her. Sakuya calmed the black-haired girl. He didn't feel that she was being rude to him. Therefore, he was fine. The girl smiled at his words. Sakuya also wondered why the girl became so envious of his happiness. It turns out that the fact was that various troubles had been happening to her lately. She even stopped laughing. The guy thought about it after her words. His companion was looking at him impatiently, waiting for his response to her situation. Soon she called out to her interlocutor again. The girl wanted to get an explanation from him about how he manages to smile so happily. The guy thought about it again, and then he pointed his index finger at the sun. He gave an example, in the form of the sun. After all, the sun was pleasant and shone so warmly, and that's why he immediately felt lighthearted. The guy awkwardly explained to the girl. The black-haired girl was surprised that this was enough for happiness. She thought it was something else. When his companion saw him smiling happily, she thought that something special had happened to him. That's why she wanted to ask him about it. The guy was an ordinary person. Therefore, simple things could please him. The girl was depressed. She is constantly surrounded by people who can't relax in any way. That's why she didn't have time to laugh at all. But if she was always busy, she definitely wouldn't be in his situation, in such shabby clothes. The guy changed the sad topic, distracting her to himself. The girl stared at him, stunned. Then his companion giggled sweetly. The girl stared at the grinning guy in a daze. She realized that she had suddenly started giggling and covered her mouth in surprise. Sakuya asked the girl with a grin about her laughter, but she denied it. However, the guy continued to point at her laughter. And soon, a bubbly and pleasant laugh was heard from the girl. She was smiling brightly because of the situation. Time passed. The queue did not end. Sakuya understood now. The huge queue was due to the fact that Saint Melanie and the hero Alavis were exhausted due to long looks. However, it was the right decision to come to the palace on that day. The guy was glad that he could be of some use to the girl. The black-haired girl asked the guy about the holiday. She wanted to know why he came to the palace for congratulations. Sakuya explained to her that there was a connection between the newlyweds and him. He wanted to tell his comrades that even if they split up, this connection would not be lost. The girl looked at him in shock. She realized that he had a connection to the rumors about the missing comrade of the heroes. But suddenly, a knight called out to them. It was finally their turn, and they could go to the palace. However, they had to register at the front desk first. Sakuya walked over to the registration desk. But he was not allowed to go further because the employee could not let him in shabby clothes. The guy asked the employee to at least look at the faces of his familiar characters. However, she was categorically against it, and he had to leave. Sakuya was saddened. The clothing stores were currently closed, and the guy remembered that they would only open tomorrow. He was too careless. First, he needed to get himself in order. Suddenly, rapid footsteps were heard approaching him. The black-haired girl grabbed the guy by the arm and dragged him along. Sakuya could only shout out of surprise. His friend was walking confidently in one direction. The guy didn't know where they were going. He was also worried about the girl's cue. After all, she skipped her turn for him. However, the black-haired girl only smiled at him. She wanted to thank the guy for his past actions. His companion was holding a small key in her hands. Soon they came to a building. After a while, they found themselves inside a clothing store. Sakuya was surprised that it was open. It turns out that the girl's relatives ran this store, so they could easily enter it. Sakuya thanked the girl for her help. She helped him a lot out of the clothing situation. After a while, the guy completely changed in appearance. His hair began to look neat because of the haircut. He himself was dressed in decent and beautiful clothes, revealing the beauty of his figure. The girl wanted to know if he wanted to buy clothes or rent them. The guy, of course, bought clothes and gave her money for a shirt and trousers. The girl, counting the coins, realized that he had given too much for clothes. However, the guy refused to give up. Because he was grateful to the girl for taking him to the store, thereby saving him from the situation. Now he could get into the palace. The girl looked at her interlocutor with admiration. His gentle touch on her palm made her cheeks flush thickly. Soon, they returned back to the courtyard of the palace. The girl was glad that everything went well. Sakuya was grateful to her. Because of her, the check for the entrance to the palace was successful. He was admitted to the ceremony. The guy was very grateful to the girl. Therefore, he bowed to her as a sign of his deep gratitude. The black-haired girl just smiled. It was her duty that he could make her laugh so much. Sakuya looked at his companion in fascination, and then he turned to her with a serious face. The guy pointed out to the black-haired girl her outfit. Her outfit was just perfect for the girl, emphasizing her appearance. From the compliment of the guy, his interlocutor was embarrassed. Hearing his praise made her a little happy. Then, after her words, the girl grabbed the guy by the palm again and dragged him towards the palace. A guy and a girl were heading down the main road. A magnificent and majestic castle awaited them. A ceremony was taking place inside it in the throne room. In the room, the hero Alavis and the Holy Virgin Melanie sat on throne chairs. They've changed a lot in the past 100 days. The citizen congratulated them and then left the throne room. The Holy Virgin Melanie was deeply upset. She remembered her comrade Sakuya with sadness. Soon, the knight's voice sounded. He notified them of the arrival of the next guest. The girl understood that she shouldn't have been sad at her ceremony. She closed her eyes and began to calm herself. Melanie has other things to think about. It would be disrespectful to the people who came to congratulate her on her wedding. Melanie calmed down and began to fake a smile, so as not to show her sadness to others. At the same moment, her eyes widened at what she saw. The girl in the wedding dress stood up from her throne chair in surprise. The hero Alavis drew attention to this and wanted to find out the reason for Melanie's action. But she did not look at him and did not pay attention to him. The girl smiled with joy. Tears appeared in her eyes. Melanie was overjoyed when she found out that Sakura had survived. The man sitting next to her was perplexed when Sakuya called out to her. At the mention of Sakuya, Alavis instantly got angry and turned angrily towards the guy. Sakuya waved to his comrades with a smile. He was glad that they were in good health. Still frowning, Alavis looked at the guy in surprise. The hero thought that he had been eliminated long ago. But no, he was fine. Sakuya returned from the corridor of doom. When he heard that Melanie and Alavis had decided to get married, he thought it would be nice to let them know about his well-being. Sakuya also wanted to congratulate them. Melanie was a little surprised. She doubted Sakuya's true identity. Because he had changed for her, the guy seemed to have grown younger. However, Sakuya denied this. It's just that a lot of things happened to him. There was little time to be present in the throne room. Therefore, Sakuya pulled out a scroll from his pocket. The guy started to read congratulations to his teammates. Melanie listened to the guy's congratulations with a smile. Dissatisfied, Alavis, barely restraining himself from unnecessary actions, sat back on the throne chair. The man was annoyed by Sakuya's appearance. Melanie did not pay attention to her future betrothed. She only looked at Sakuya with a warm smile. Alavis noticed this. He was frowning at the Holy Virgin. Sakuya's congratulatory speech was over, and finally he wanted to give something to his comrades. The guy, taking out a bouquet from the attachment on his belt, climbed the steps and approached his comrades. Sakuya then gave the bouquet he had bought to Melanie. The Holy Virgin looked at the guy reverently. She received a bouquet of bluebell flowers with flushed cheeks. Then Sakuya wished Melanie and Alavis to be happy, but suddenly an irritated voice sounded. He was saying that Sakuya still remained sarcastic. Instantly, Alavis was in front of the guy. He frowned at the guy with a gloomy look. The man thought that the guy had come to them in order to take away his Melanie. He brought the accusation against Sakuya. For a moment there was silence in the throne room. The knights and priests were stunned by the awkwardness of the situation. Sakuya wanted to explain that this was not the case, but Alavis did not even let him speak. He continued to accuse his former partner. Melanie, blushing with shame, tried to stop Alavis. However, he continued. The man angrily informed Sakuya that Melanie had not chosen Sakuya, but him. Sakuya wanted to calm Alavis down. However, she told the guy to shut up. The man confidently informed everyone that he was the winner of the Demon King. The proof of this was that he received as many as 10 ability points for eliminating an enemy. The man, saying this, showed in his own words that he was much taller than Sakuya. However, Sakuya didn't give up. He just wanted to say that he was their friend. Alavis was silent for a moment. Alavis repeated Sakuya once more. With barely restrained anger, he explained to the guy again that Melanie had chosen him. He had to accept this fact. While the angry man was talking, rapid female footsteps were heard in the throne room, and the sound of shoes' heels was heard. Alavis told the guy that no matter how good a person he pretended to be, it would not shake Melanie's feelings towards him. The knocking increased, and someone was rushing towards them. Then Alavis shouted to the whole hall that the only beauty in the whole world was now his wife. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps stopped. The black-haired girl took off the elastic band from her hair, thereby letting it down. Then she tightly wrapped her arms around the guy's arm, approaching him. Sakuya was stunned. The girl had already managed to put her jacket somewhere, remaining in only a light dress. His friend greeted the hero Alavis and the Holy Virgin Melanie. She congratulated them on their upcoming wedding. The girl continued talking. She informed them that Alavis seemed to have been misled. After all, Sakura did not come to the palace to take away his bride, because he's dating her. The girl smiled brightly at everyone at these words. Alavis, Sakuya, and Melanie were shocked by the black-haired girl's words. They stared at him in amazement. Then the girl called out to the hero, Alavis. She thanked him for marrying Saint Melanie. After all, then she would have become her rival. At her words, the girl's saint frowned. She turned towards Sakuya. Melanie, frowning, wanted to know the identity of the girl who was next to Sakuya. The guy could not answer his former partner, because he himself did not understand the whole situation. The black-haired girl did not stand still. She bowed to Alavis and Melanie. Then the girl grabbed Sakuya and took him towards the exit from the throne room. When she left, she once again congratulated those on the wedding. The black-haired girl finally looked at the newlyweds with an arrogant look. The Holy Virgin Melanie immediately frowned. She restrained her anger. Soon Sakuya and his companion left the throne room. The guy and the girl went out of the palace into the street. The girl was relaxed. She asked her companion about a recent meeting. Sakuya didn't understand why the girl did this in the throne room. It turns out that the actions of the hero Alavis made the girl very angry, so she did it. The girl realized that she had gone too far, so he apologized. But the guy refused. He was even happy. They were a couple, even if only for a moment. But the girl regretted saying it publicly. With a flushed face, she confusedly said that she regretted saying publicly that they were a couple. The guy understood the girl's words, but did not react to her confused face in any way. If someone asks him about their relationship, Sakuya will just say that they broke up. Suddenly, a horse cart pulled up to them. Then a man in a suit jumped out of it in alarm. He finally found the princess he was looking for. An elderly man approached a black-haired girl. He was worried that she was next to a stranger, that is, Sakuya. While the girl was explaining everything to her servant, she was surrounded by knights in armor. Not letting Sakuya get close to her, the guy realized that the black-haired girl was from the royal family. Then someone called out to Sakuya. It was his friend. She informed him with a smile that she had been caught. Sakuya just smiled at that. The girl, entering the cart, thanked the guy for a great walk. The guy also thanked her in return. His new acquaintance had already entered the carriage when she suddenly stopped halfway. She forgot to do something. Therefore, the black-haired girl turned back and swiftly approached the guy, thereby making his servants and knights worried. Getting close to the guy, the girl whispered in his ear, so that he wouldn't cheat on her. Sakuya, blushing, covered his ear with embarrassment because of the feeling of the girl's breath on it. The guy's new friend returned back to the cart. She said goodbye to the guy, waving at him. Soon, the horse carriage surrounded by the knights left with the girl. Sakuya was left alone. The guy was still stunned by the girl's recent actions. Her words about him not cheating stayed in his head. But then the guy turned his head, pushing away the bad thoughts. He couldn't believe what had happened, and there was also the possibility that he would meet her again. Therefore, the most correct thing would be to simply forget about the incident. But Sakuya didn't want to leave it like that. However, then the guy accepted the situation and let go of his thoughts about her. Meanwhile, the carriage continued on its way. The girl in the carriage was incredibly embarrassed. She felt an unknown feeling. Now the black-haired girl couldn't get Sakuya's smile out of her head. He was different from the people she usually met on blind dates. The princess couldn't believe that she was attracted to him. She clutched the fabric of her dress at the thought. The black-haired girl turned to her companion. She wanted the carriage to be stopped. The elderly man did not understand the reason for her request. The girl continued talking. She informed him that she wanted to return to the guy they had recently left. The princess wanted to meet Sakura again as soon as possible. However, the man was against it. After all, the girl did not even know Sakuya and had no idea about his personality. However, even though the princess understood this, she considered Sakuya to be the most wonderful guy for her. The man wanted his mistress to think more and come to her senses, to which the girl asked him in a menacing voice about his true place. The words of her father, the king, indicated that she could do anything. The elderly man felt the pressure from the girl. This involuntarily made him swallow a lump in his throat. The man didn't mean it. He understood the seriousness of the whole situation. He called out to the princess once more, but the girl still wanted to find Sakuya. She had never felt like this before. The man had to accept his mistress's wish. Therefore, at the same moment, the carriage turned in the opposite direction. She was rapidly heading towards the capital, which they had recently left. Soon, the carriage with horses arrived in the capital. The girl, out of breath, turned to her servants, but they only shook their heads negatively. They did not find Sakuya. The girl understood this. The princess then thanked her companions for putting up with her selfishness. However, they thought the opposite. She was too kind. The black-haired girl looked sadly at the sky. She wanted to see and meet a guy named Sakuya again. Night fell. The sky was covered with a night cover. Only the full moon shone brightly on it. Meanwhile, in the royal palace of the capital, Melanie was sitting alone on the bed. She was looking at a flower called a bluebell. It was this bouquet of flowers that Sakuya gave her. Melanie couldn't believe he was alive. Then, still looking at the bells, the girl said with a smile that there would be no wedding ceremony. Placing the flowers on her lap, the Holy Virgin Melanie began to pray to dear Lars, the god of light. She told her god that she was happy to be able to see Sakuya again. For this, she thanked the god of light Lars. Melanie then sadly called Sakuya's name. When she met him, it was the first time the girl saw kindness in a man. In the hero Alavis, there was not an ounce of kindness from the black-haired guy. Therefore, it was only natural that her heart yearned for Sakuya. The girl continued to pray to her god of light Lars. Suddenly, her prayer was interrupted by deafening blows on the door of her room. It was an angry Alavis. The man knew that the girl was in her room. He furiously begged Melanie's forgiveness so that you would open the door for him. The hero had a conversation with the girl. However, in response, he was told that Alavis was a fool. The girl did not even try to open the door for Alavis. She was standing by the window, looking into the distance. All her thoughts were about Sakuya. Melanie would like him to come to see her again. Suddenly, Melanie called out to a man named Shizu. Then, instantly, a hooded girl appeared at her call. She informed the Holy Virgin of her presence. Melanie showed her subordinate a flower presented by Sakuya with a wide smile. Shizu praised the flower, and the girl in the mask also noticed that her mistress was so happy with such a gift. The Holy Virgin continued to hold the flower with both hands. Then she turned to her subordinate. She had a request for Shizu. The girl asked Shizu to help her escape from the Lindehof country. Shizu was silent for a moment. Melanie, not receiving an affirmative answer from her assistant, informed her that it was not a joke. Shizu asked the Holy Virgin if her escape was related to Mr. Alaves. Melanie just smiled broadly. Then instantly, her smile disappeared from her face. Melanie said she'd had enough. She continued to speak with a gloomy expression. The girl was disappointed in Alibis. He had already shown his true nature more than once. She no longer felt comfortable. That's why Melanie wanted to leave him. Looking at the flower, she announced that she would go to Sakuya. The Holy Virgin carefully held the flower presented by Sakuya. She asked her subordinate if she knew the meaning of the Lily of the Valley. It turns out that the Lily of the Valley flower meant the return of happiness. Having said that, Melanie looked at the Lily of the Valley with despair and sadness. Shizu wanted to know where Melanie wanted to go. Melanie, looking at the flower, began to dance. She wanted to get a job offer from her subordinate. The girl in a mask and hood offered Melanie their village. He was the best option to hide. The holy girl continued to dance. She accepted Shizu's version. Suddenly, the Holy Virgin stopped, finishing her figurative dance. The girl remembered something and wanted to complete her request. Shizu immediately responded to her mistress's request. The Holy Virgin Melanie remembered the black-haired girl who was near Sakuya. She wanted to know about her true identity. The girl, remembering the previous situation with the stranger, frowned. Shizu accepted Melanie's order. Then Shizu opened the doors to the balcony. She stood beside him expectantly. The girl was waiting for Melanie to come out. She wanted to take her to the temple. Soon there was no one on the balcony. Only the leaves of the trees remained. Meanwhile, at the hotel on the outskirts, Sakuya, sitting in the rented room, did not know what to do now. The guy realized that Alibis hated him. Therefore, he no longer had a place in the capital Lindehof. After all, the hero Alibis was a brave man who defeated the demon lord. He will also become king in the near future and will undoubtedly play a role in the governance of the country. Sakuya lay down on the bed and thought. The guy understood that he should go to another place and not stay in the capital of Lindehof. However, it will be difficult for him to return to the Black Heresy Church to which he belongs. But in the capital Lindehof, there were all the other churches of all the gods, namely the god of light Lars, the goddess of earth Eliel, and the god of war Vinegar. These three were the chief among all the gods. Sakuya, on the other hand, was from a faraway place where heretical gods are worshipped. The guy knew that he was expected there. He remembered the girl and the old man. But he was sure there were other options. Then the guy realized that he had strayed from the topic. Sakuya was thinking about the country he would go to. At the moment, he was in Lindehof. There were still kingdoms in the Aegean continent: Lilac Sword, Isabel, Resheva, Misery, Elpolia, and the city of St. Alicia. Elpolia and the city of St. Licia. The guy thought about it. Lying on the bed, he used a magic circle to form a cube in it. Then the guy presented his palm to the cube. The guy pulled out a peach from the corridor of doom. Biting into a sweet peach, the guy was thinking about the option in which he would go to the kingdom of the Lilac Sword. Sakuya got up from the bed. Memories of the Lilac Sword Kingdom lingered in him. It was the richest and largest of the 7 kingdoms. In addition, it had a warm climate. The kingdom of the Lilac Sword was located next to Lindehof. And the guy also remembered that there were a huge number of adventurers in this kingdom, the most. There was also a National Defense Academy and an adventurer training school. Sakuya had heard that there were more of them than in other countries. In Lyrasis, Sakuya wanted to join a team of adventurers in order to earn a living. At this thought, the guy had a grin on his face. He couldn't wait for this moment. After a while, the guy was holding his stomach. He had eaten too many peaches, so he felt sick. Sakuya took too much. There were plenty of fruits in the demon world. There was also room in his vault. Storage is a useful skill that allows you to store items in another space. It imagines itself as a cube, piercing a magic circle. It is used everywhere. The number of items stored in the shelf life vary from person to person. But soon the guy was overcome by fatigue. He lay back on the bed. Sakuya lay down wearily on the bed. He decided to go to sleep. Then the guy fell into a deep sleep. While he was sleeping, his body changed, gradually shrinking in size, leaving him in newly suitable clothes. It became huge for him. The night was calm. Not a single star was visible among the night clouds. Only the full moon brightly illuminated the surroundings. The next day soon came. The sky brightened. Sakuya woke up from a dream. He went down the stairs without noticing the changes in his body. Then, going to the registration desk, the guy paid off the rented room, thanking the employee. The woman stared at him dumbfounded, but accepted the coins anyway. Sakuya then left the building, saying goodbye to the woman. The employee was surprised. She was worried about the recently departed boy. The guy got on his horse and set off. The employee was concerned that the boy was too young. Sakuya suddenly noticed that his horse had suddenly become big for him. He hasn't figured out his changes yet. Soon, the Mycen Wall appeared. This wall was the entrance to the Lilac Sword Kingdom of Lyrasis. There was a huge queue near the entrance. Sakuya, sitting astride a horse, finally reached the place he needed. He was able to arrive at the wall fairly quickly, considering that the Kingdom of Lyrasis was a neighboring country. There was a registration check in Mason's Wall. Each of the people present in the crowd had to pass through it. Sakuya was standing in line. He was waiting for the moment of verification. Soon it was his turn. A blonde girl, an employee of the registration desk, looked at Sakuya with affection. She called him a sweet boy and asked about the kingdom's permission. The guy didn't understand why she called him a cute boy if he was 25 years old. Soon Sakuya gave the girl his registration card. The employee, after checking the card, was surprised. The registration card had a photo of an adult Sakuya and his rank. Sakuya had the rank of lieutenant. The blonde girl thought that he had taken someone else's card. She told him that crossing the border was not a game, to which Sakuya was stunned. The girl continued talking. She wanted to find the boy's father. This time, the employee forgave Sakuya. Then she confiscated the permit. Sakuya was alarmed because his permit had been confiscated. Then the girl sweetly told him that you will wait for the moment when he grows up to be a handsome man. Sakuya was surprised. He told her that he was a grown man. He was already 25. There was silence for a moment. The girl showed the guy his current appearance with the help of a mirror. Sakuya's reflection in the mirror showed his youthful version. Sakuya looked like a little boy, which shocked him. Alarmed, he walked away from the registration desk. He was followed by goodbyes from the employee in the night. However, he soon didn't worry about anything. After all, Sakuya got to the kingdom of the Lilac Sword anyway. The boy walked calmly through the streets of the city. Sakuya did not think that he would really become younger. The guy in the boy's body knew what had happened. He realized awkwardly that because of the large number of peaches he had eaten, he had turned into a younger version of himself. Sakuya didn't know if he could fight with such a body. Fortunately, the strength and skill of fencing have not changed. Sakuya couldn't do anything about who he had become. Even so, he still has the skills. The boy was inspired and was not sad about the situation. Then he remembered something. At the border, the boy was told that in order to get permission to stay in the new kingdom, he had to go to the National Defense Academy. Sakuya headed there. The National Wrestling Academy is the place where the Guild and the Adventurer Academy are united. She is also responsible for issuing a residence permit in the kingdom. If he enters the academy, he will listen to lectures and gain practical skills, and also perform tasks together with a teacher to increase your rank. Rank is one of the standards of strength. The lowest rank was private. The captain was 3 steps above him, and the highest ranks were lieutenant general and general. The academy only produced captains, and they received benefits from the state every year. Sakuya had the rank of lieutenant, and the brave Alavis was a lieutenant colonel. The rank of lieutenant colonel was closer to the rank of lieutenant general, and above the rank of lieutenant. Soon, Sakuya approached the National Defense Academy. Once inside, the guy among the crowd began to look for the secretary he needed. After a while, he found it. The guy told the employee that he came to get permission. The employee said that there are permits for regular troops and for adventurers. The guy chose the second option. Then he replied to the girl that he was from Lindehof and was in the kingdom of the Lilac Sword for the first time. The employee asked the guy his age, but he did not answer. In his current appearance, the guy looked 12 or 13 years old. Therefore, the girl informed him that Sakuya would have to enroll in the National Defense Academy first. Sakuya didn't agree with this, but because of his current appearance, he couldn't say anything. He realized that there was a rule in the kingdom. It said that aspiring adventurers less than 15 years old should have entered the academy. The employee said goodbye to him and wished him good luck. The training at the academy lasted 4 years, and in 5 days there will be an entrance exam. Sakuya thanked the girl. Then he went outside. Now Sakuya understood how uncomfortable it was to be in a child's body. The guy didn't know if he could live normally with such a body. After a while, Sakuya was walking near the kingdom. Soon the guy remembered something. He completely forgot about his skill points. Sakuya hoped that they would increase by at least 3 points. The guy activated the magic and the system tables with his data appeared in front of him. Looking through them, Sakuya was stunned. From the data he saw, his body began to tremble. It turns out that Sakuya had as many as 323 skill points. He looked at the number of his points in disbelief. Then the guy calmed down. He understood the reason for the increase in points. The elimination of demons with the help of Astarte was counted as his own. Sakuya remembered that Alavis had said that he had received 10 points for destroying the Demon King. So his number of points counted as 32 destroyed Demon Kings. And to score 1 point, you had to defeat thousands of demons of the same level. The guy was still stunned by the amount of his skill points. Now, he didn't care that he had become a child. Squeezing his palm, Sakuya felt a flowing energy that contained more than 300 points. The guy was full of energy. At the same moment, all his skills were raised by several levels. Suddenly, a sign appeared in front of the guy. It was written about the expiration of the skill tree. Sakuya had the opportunity to change his profession from warrior monk to destroyer monk. He thought about it because this was the first time he had heard about it. However, Sakuya agreed to a change of profession. He already has a great demon Astarte, so this was the perfect choice for him. Then there was a change of profession to the destroyer monk. The guy was sent a new skill tree. Sakuya began to examine the contents of the newly acquired skill tree. He enthusiastically hoped that he would succeed with his new profession. After a while, the guy found himself in front of the thick of the forest. Sakuya, warming up, wanted to try out the skills of his new profession. After all, he needed to master them before he went to the third academy. The guy wanted to start practicing his new skills already. Suddenly, someone called out to him. An unknown voice told Sakuya that the forest was not a place for a child. It was a blonde girl. There was a horse next to her, and she had a sword with her. Sakuya stopped for a moment, but then continued walking deeper into the forest. However, the girl anxiously wanted to stop him. Approaching him and grabbing Sakuya by the hand, she informed him that there were evil monsters in the forest. However, a dark and frightening look stopped her from continuing the conversation. The blonde girl let go of his hand in fright. Sakuya had already entered the territory of the forest. The guy continued to walk forward. The girl looked after him with concern and incomprehension. Sakuya walked further into the forest. Soon he noticed with relief that the girl was not chasing him. So the guy stopped in place. Then he threw himself into the robe. Sakuya, remaining in the set of adventurers, began to practice. The guy activated the storage skill, and a magic circle with a cube appeared immediately. He started looking for something in his vault. The guy took out 3 cards from the storage chamber. Various monsters were painted on them. Among them was his main trump card, namely the demon Astarte. There were 3 great demons under the guy's command at the moment. Besides Astarte, there were 2 other demons he defeated in the world and agreed to go with him. Sakuya put the cards of his subordinate demons on his armor. Immediately, he felt the magic that activated the power of his subordinates. While the guy was looking at his reservation, suddenly a huge shadow fell on him. There was a huge monster behind Sakuya. Only he wasn't alone. A monster of enormous size, holding a huge wooden club in his hands, looked ahead. Sakuya was looking at his opponent. The guy realized that his opponents were trolls of the rank of sergeant. These were the opponents that 6 adventurers were fighting against. Sakuya realized that this was exactly what the blonde girl had warned him about. The trolls scanned the surroundings and finally noticed the boy's presence. Sakuya wasn't afraid to fight them. The troll, roaring loudly and holding a baton in his hands, quickly headed towards the boy. Sakuya immediately got into a fighting stance. He was a little stressed by the trolls. At the same moment, something landed on the huge troll, causing the monster to fall violently to the ground. A strong impact rang out, causing the ground to shake and dust to rise. Sakuya managed to jump away from the scene. With some surprise, he jumped back some distance. The guy was surprised by the suddenness of the incident. Soon the dust settled down, and the beak of an animal-like bird appeared from that place. It was the king of the forest, a giant bird. The king of the forest easily eliminated the troll, and the bird began to devour the monster. How suddenly she noticed the boy's presence. Her rank was 3 steps above trolls. Shouting and spreading his wings, the king of the forest swiftly headed towards Sakuya. The guy's system table notified him about the start of the fight. At the same moment, Sakuya's many skills were activated. The guy was wondering how strong he was now. Therefore, he decided to try to attack to find out. The king of the forest had already approached the guy. Opening his beak, he already wanted to grab Sakuya with it. Sakuya waited for the attack with nervous trepidation. He was worried about the possibility of his own destruction after the attack. The beast-like bird had already bitten the guy with its beak, capturing half of his body. However, after that, her eyes widened, and the king of the forest immediately spat Sakuya back out with lightning speed. Sakuya was unharmed after the attack. The beak could not penetrate him. His clothes were only slightly holed. The 323rd level wasn't that bad. In the next second, a card with his subordinate was activated on Sakuya's armor. Astarte, the priestess of purgatory, was immediately at his side, and two subordinates in the form of spirits, the demonic dragon, one of the 72nd pillars of Solomon, and the Lord of the Flies, one of the 7 deadly sins. Sakuya activated the simultaneous summoning of 3 great demons without cast. The guy wasn't worried about the fight. Immediately, the guy initiated a counterattack with the help of his profession. The demonic dragon summoned the spell Eternal Flame of Armageddon on the enemy. Astarte, the priestess of purgatory, attacked the beast-like bird with the brand of a fallen angel, and the Lord of the Flies used the devouring skill. The king of the forest was defeated. Sakuya was shocked by the fight he saw. He had gone too far. Immediately, magic circles appeared on his armor, in places where there were cards with subordinate demons. Then the guy was notified that there was a triple high-level alarm. Curse of the Destroyer, Revenge of Tenio, Tongue of the Lord of the Flies. Sakuya didn't understand what had happened, but at the same moment, the magic circles notifying the alarm began to disappear. The trigger failed. The enemy was already defeated. The destruction of the enemy has been confirmed. Sakuya realized that if the enemy survived the attacks, he would attack again. Then the guy received a notification about the activation of the automatic absorption of the physical, magical, and vital forces of the defeated king of the forest. The guy looked at the additional activations with shock. Immediately, Sakuya received incredible powers from the bird. The guy was stunned that his skill could automatically restore his strength and magic. There wasn't a scratch on it. There was a long silence. The guy looked at himself in disbelief. Just now, it was the power of the great demons that he received when changing the specialty of his profession. It would be good to keep them with you, but wearing them at the academy would be too dangerous. Just tapping won't activate them. But just in case the guy got over it, he took off 3 cards from his subordinates and thought about it. Then the guy decided that he would just wear their medallions as a mascot. Sakuya left only the Astarte on his armor, hiding the other cards. Soon after a certain time, the guy returned to the academy again. A large building with beautiful decor represented the 3rd National Defense Academy. Sakuya had heard that the 1st and 2nd academies were known as noble educational institutions. Therefore, he thought that the 3rd academy would be a little poorer and not look good. But it was very beautiful there. The guy looked at the time on his pocket watch and realized something. He had to first go to the place where the entrance exams were held. Sakuya then went inside the academy. After a while, he found himself in a dark basement, which was illuminated only by torchlight. Sakuya continued walking forward. Sakuya didn't think there was anything in the basement of the academy. Ahead of the guy, the leaders of the entrance exam and those who will take it were already waiting. The scarred man and the pretty girl were the exam supervisors. The man explained to the novice adventurers that they would practice practical skills against demons in the basement. He wanted to see what they were capable of. It was a hand-to-hand combat instructor named Gokudo. The next one who spoke was a girl. She secretly told all the novice adventurers that they had already been enrolled. Therefore, they didn't have to worry about the exam. It was just an exam to sort them into classes. The girl was a herbology teacher. Her name was Machiko. Then the man pointed to a spherical swinging simulator. It was created specifically for training, so that the students could attack it with any force. Therefore, they should not have worried, because the simulators would not resist. Then Instructor Gokudo looked at the students, and he chose Sakuya among all of them, so that he would be the first to try the simulator and show everyone his strength. The boy accepted this and went to get a weapon. Sakuya chose a sword among all the weapons. Standing in a fighting stance, the boy decided not to stand out among the students. Sakuya didn't want to get into the advanced class. Then the guy, trying to look like his youthful age, swaggered and immaturely headed towards the simulator to attack him. Approaching, Sakuya attacked the spherical simulator without a purpose. The spherical simulator returned to its usual appearance upon impact. Sakuya took this as a good sign, and then he swung and wanted to hit the simulator again. And with a stupid expression, he wanted to attack the simulator with his sword again. Suddenly, Sakuya accidentally stumbled over a stone floor slab, from which the boy fell to the floor. His sword fell out of his hands and flew towards the spherical simulator. The steel sword did not fall sideways to the floor, but directly stuck between the cracks of the stone floor slabs. Also, the sword was right in the shadow of the simulator. While Sakuya continued to lie on the floor, he confidently thought that he had done everything perfectly so that he would definitely not be allowed to reach a high class. It was the perfect move on his part. Instructor Gokudo was not dissatisfied with the guy, but on the contrary was surprised by the picture he saw. After all, the spherical simulator deflated and was thus destroyed by the boy. A scarred man named Kudo stared at the guy lying there in disbelief. He was stunned that he realized that the simulator demon's body was his shadow. Sakuya continued to lie on the stone floor, so when he heard the words of Instructor Gokudo, he looked at him in a daze. After a while, everyone had already left the basement of the academy. Now they were in the assembly hall. On the stage, the director stood behind the podium, and there were certain students near him. He turned to the students. Near him. He turned to the students. The man congratulated the novice adventurers on entering the third academy. Almost all the students were sitting on chairs in the auditorium and listening to the principal's speech. Sakuya was also among them. He was thoughtful. After all, the admission ceremony was taking place now. It was a very important day. However, the boy was not so happy about it. He couldn't believe he was here. Sakuya recalled how, after checking the strength indicator with the simulator, Instructor Gokudo enthusiastically informed him that Sakuya would study in the platinum class. The guy sighed sadly, because this would be a problem for him. Instructor Gokudan looked at the saddened student from the stage. The man with the scar was watching the boy. Suddenly, his herbology teacher, Machiko, called out to him. She asked Gokuda if he was really sure that Sakuya would enter the platinum class. But even she saw it. That moment was definitely cool. Sakuya's blow landed right in the heart of the simulator demon. It would be difficult for even them, the instructors, to understand this. The man with the scar considered Sakuya to be the real pearl of this year. The director was already finishing his speech and invited someone. After graduation, stormy and joyful shouts were heard from the students. Only Sakuya looked at it with awkwardness and incomprehension. It turns out that all these cheers were due to the appearance of a blonde girl. She was heading towards the director. The girl was the strongest swordsman in the Third Academy. Everyone considered her the hope of the Third Academy and the embodiment of beauty and talent itself. The delighted and joyful cheers did not stop for a moment. A girl with golden hair was confidently heading towards the podium. Sakuya, at the sight of her confident gait, considered her strong. After all, she looked promising. However, as he continued to look at her, the guy got the feeling that they had already met somewhere. Soon, the voice of a blonde girl was heard. She greeted the new students. The girl introduced herself. Her name was Ryuna. She was in the third year of the Third National Wrestling Academy. Then she greeted the students. The girl also informed the students about the activities of the academy. They often, despite the class, do laboratory work together. It was more fun to work together. Then the girl clenched her palm into a fist. She started talking about the Unified School Festival this year. With great enthusiasm, Ryuna confidently informed all the students that she would win the United School Festival. And after her words, the girl informed everyone that on this occasion, she was looking for students who would become her partners. If they had what they needed, then Ryuna would be glad to hear them. After these words, the girl's fiery speech ended there. While the blonde girl was leaving the stage, the joyful and admiring cheers along with the ovations continued. Suddenly, Ryuna turned towards the hall. She looked at Sakuya, from which the guy looked at her with a puzzled look. Sometime after the opening ceremony, Sakuya walked calmly through the courtyard of the academy. He used to study a little at his church, so school life was new to him. The guy was calm as he remembered that he would study in the platinum class, which was no longer according to his plan. Sakuya tried to calm himself down. The guy will cope with the problem. Suddenly there was a sound of impact. Because of this, Sakuya's attention was attracted. He looked in the direction of the sound that appeared. Meanwhile, on the training ground, there were 2 students against 1. One of them has already been defeated. The blonde girl was attacked by many students, but she quickly defeated everyone with a wooden sword, forcing the defeated students to leave. A large number of students kept coming up to her to fight, but no one beat her. Sakuya was in a busy crowd. He looked at the girl's fight with calmness. The guy was a little surprised by her strength. Fuyuna was really strong. After all, so far, no one could defeat her from the students of the 3rd Academy. It seemed to Sakuya that the girl would easily make it to the 2nd round of the school festival. However, her movements were too stiff. Sakuya also thought that she wasn't half as good as she thought she was. Suddenly, someone turned to him. It was a blonde girl. She gave the guy her palm as a sign of confirmation of the fight. Sakuya stared at her outstretched hand in a daze. The guy immediately refused Fuyuna's offer. He lied to her, saying he couldn't win it. However, Gokudo's instructor had already told her everything. Fuyuna had heard that Sakuya had done well in the entrance exam. Sakuya tried to refuse again. He realized that now, he could not easily lie to her and come up with a reason for refusing to fight with her. Fuyuna continued to speak. She reminded the boy that he was the one who went into the troll forest alone, and then he also returned alone. Sakuya told her that she was mistaken, and he remembered that Fuyuna was the girl who warned him then. The girl didn't say anything about his lies. I just threw a wooden sword in his direction. He flew off and landed right in front of the guy, sticking into the ground. Sakuya stood awkwardly. Meanwhile, the blonde-haired girl came to the place where the other wooden swords were. She notified the guy that they would be able to find out right now whether she was wrong or not. This fight wasn't in Sakuya's best interests. He didn't want to fight her in battle. However, he also couldn't lie anymore. Therefore, the boy took the hilt of a wooden sword. Sakuya confidently approached Fuyuna with a grin. He was not against this development. The blonde girl noticed the guy's correct stance. He really could do something. Looking at her, Sakuya could also say the same thing about her. The guy looked at his opponent with a confident look at the moment. Fuyuna, a 3rd-year student of the academy, has not been in such anticipation of a fight for a long time. But still, she wanted to know what Sakuya was capable of. Sakuya made the decisions. He thought it was a good idea to support the best students in the academy from behind the scenes. But the guy was thinking about how to keep his secret without revealing all the power. The girl also informed him about the beginning of the battle. Immediately, Fuyuna moved from her seat with lightning speed and appeared right in front of the guy. The girl, waving her sword, informed him that she would not allow Sakuya to teach her. Sakuya was calm. He looked at the girl's movements with a serious look. The girl was approaching and wanted to attack him. The guy immediately raised his sword. The black-haired guy instantly defended himself from Fuyuna's blow, preventing her from attacking him in the leg. The girl just grinned at that. The next moment, she jumped away from the guy for some distance. Now Sakuya was heading towards her, trying to catch up with Fuyuna. The guy, heading towards her, was at the same pace with her. He pointed his sword and wanted to attack her, when suddenly, the girl herself suddenly struck at his sword, preventing him from touching her. Fuyuna then swung her sword again to launch an attack. However, Sakuya was able to defend himself from her by raising his sword up with lightning speed. Then the guy attacked his opponent again, but she easily dodged the attack. The girl, swinging her sword, was able to strike the guy on the shoulder. The same one will not be able to defend himself, because he was busy attacking her. The girl easily bounced off her opponent. Sakuya sank to the ground for a moment due to the pain in his shoulder from her blow. Fuyuna finally realized what Sakuya was really like. The guy, trembling all over and holding on to his sore shoulder, got up from the ground. He was just confident in his ability to withstand beatings, to which the girl admired his fortitude. Then, with lightning speed, Fuyuna directed her attack at the guy again. The crowd looked at the prolonged battle with some concern. The sounds of wooden swords striking could only be heard on the training ground. It's been a long time since students have seen a freshman fight with a high school student for more than a minute. But still, soon Sakuya was left exhausted. His legs could no longer hold him, which was why he could not get up from his knees. The girl, frowning, looked at her opponent with a serious look. Sakuya called out to Fuyuna, but then he couldn't speak any further due to fatigue. Looking at him, the girl could only sigh in disappointment. However, the guy hasn't finished yet. Fuyuna stopped fighting Sakuya. She understood that he no longer had the strength. The girl noticed the guy's good swordsmanship. Also, his trajectories were perfect, and the force of the blow was also impressive. The guy stunned thanked the girl for evaluating his fencing skills. However, the girl continued to speak. Sakuya had a fatal flaw, so Fuyuna was forced to say that he was not suitable for her to partner. Sakuya was stunned. He asked his recent opponent in the fight about his fatal flaw. The girl informed him that his sword was too thin. Therefore, he does not inspire fear in the enemy. Fuyuna had never seen a sword with such a blade. Sakuya, on the other hand, was not saddened by his fatal flaw. He looked at Fuyuna with admiration and joy, because she was able to recognize the essence of his sword. On the other hand, Sakuya, in the opinion of the girl, deserves praise, because his sword style is difficult to use. But this did not change her opinion that he was not suitable for her to partner in fencing. The guy didn't pay attention to it. He was still immensely pleased with her words about his sword style. It was the best compliment he could get. The girl continued talking. Her goal was to win this year's United School Festival. When instructor Gokudo told her about Sakuya, she had high hopes for him. However, this sword would not be enough to make Sakuya her partner. He wasn't up to it. The depressed girl sadly said this. The guy just didn't get sad about it. He looked at her with a confident look. Sakuya realized that his high school student was the best role model. The guy thought about it reverently. The girl was already leaving the guy. She thanked Sakuya for paying attention to her. She also apologized to him, because she would have to find another partner. However, she is always ready to take up the challenge of battle again. Suddenly, for a girl, Sakuya called out to her with a shout, thereby forcing her to stop. The girl turned towards the guy and saw his hard and piercing gaze, which only made her smile. Sakuya asked the girl in a confident voice to give him one last chance to fight. After all, now he had to show her everything he could. The girl accepted the guy's challenge. She gave him another chance to get a place as her fencing partner. Sakuya took up a fighting stance. He realized that he was not very good at fencing in general. He also couldn't plan his strikes properly. The confident and serious looks of the guy and the girl collided with each other. However, the guy had an advantage in something. The moment the battle began, Sakuya quickly disappeared from the girl's sight. The guy had the strength and will to win, which guaranteed him not to give up. At the same moment, Sakuya instantly appeared next to the girl and attacked with his wooden sword. The girl was surprised to feel his sudden presence near him, but because of the guy's incredible speed, she couldn't dodge his attack. The guy's wooden sword was already near her throat. The blonde girl looked at Sakuya's sword, which appeared near her weak point, with great shock. She was stunned not only by the suddenness, but also by the incredible speed of the guy. Sakuya looked at her with a serious look. After a while, Fuyuna entered the teacher's office. When she entered the room, she immediately called out loudly to the teacher. The man with the scar had already heard and knew about the girl's fight with the black-haired guy. The blonde girl did not deny it. She informed Gokudo's instructor that Sakuya was too good a fighter. Gokudo's teacher asked her about the guy's skill. The girl saw Sakuya's skill level. Although he was still in the process of learning, he surprised with his strength. The scarred man noticed his student's enthusiasm for the new guy. He half-jokingly asked her if she had fallen in love with Sakuya, from which the girl immediately blushed all over her face. Confused, Fuyuna didn't want the instructor to say that. After a while, she was able to calm down. The girl told the man with the scar that it was a lie. The man apologized to her. He was just joking. Then they quickly changed the subject. Instructor Gokudo wanted to know the reason for the girl's arrival in his office. Fuyuna remembered what she had come for and informed the man that she would like to choose Sakuya. The girl, in a joyful and enthusiastic voice, informed the Gokudo instructor that she had finally chosen her partner. It will be Sakuya. Sakuya's room was on the first floor of the student dormitory. It was a great place to stay. The rooms had everything for a comfortable stay. After a while, the Platinum class students were standing on the training ground with Gudo instructor with them. At the moment, they were having a lesson against a wooden doll. Each of them will fight in turn. The doll didn't move, so the students didn't have to worry, but just attack it. Sakuya stood quietly and listened to the instructor. He was now officially the partner of third-year student Fuyuna. Suddenly, the guy noticed something. Every student looked at him. and rumors about his partnership with Fuyuna spread rapidly through the academy. Moreover, Fuyuna recommended Sakuya to the teachers as well. The students wondered if Sakuya would really become the representative of the Unified School Festival this year. Everyone expected something interesting from the guy in the lesson, so Sakuya listened awkwardly to the gossip around him. He knew that sparring with Fuyuna would attract too much attention, but not everyone was happy with Fuyuna's partner. The blonde boy gritted his teeth in anger. He was unhappy that Fuyuna had chosen this guy over him. The blonde guy's name was Puzo. He was an earth summoner by profession. To his displeasure, the girl with freckles cheerfully replied that although Palewo is the head of the family, but male jealousy does not make him beautiful. The girl's name was Sushana. Her specialty is the magician of ancient runes. Poro immediately got angry at the girl's words and verbally attacked her. However, Sushana did not stay in place and rebuffed the guy, cursing him verbally as well. Suddenly their quarrel stopped. Gokudo's instructor called out to them and stopped them. The lesson has begun. The girl and the guy were angry, but they stopped. Gokudo's instructor immediately changed the subject and drew attention to the twins, a boy named Thelma and a girl named Louise. The twins had the same style of fencing, namely, they used a shield in the Gandharvas style. The brother and sister were the first to go to the training ground. Instantly approaching the wooden dolls, the boy and the girl attacked and destroyed the dolls with one blow of their sword. At the same time, they also held a shield in their hands. It was needed for protection. After the demonstration training, Sakuya enthusiastically praised Thelma and Louise for destroying the dolls. Sushana also saw the power of the twins, with their Gandharva shield style. The girl didn't want to lose to them. The girl with freckles went next after the twins. She informed the Gokudo instructor that she would defeat 2 wooden dolls. The man with the scar accepted her wish. He liked purposeful people. Then Sushana used the spell Flaming Arrows. At the same moment, fire appeared in her palm, which soon took the form of arrows. Then the girl immediately attacked the training dolls with her fire arrows. After that, Sakuya patted the girl with great joy and delight. He praised Sushan, and she received a standing ovation from the guy. Polo said with arrogance that it was all boring. He asked the instructor for 3 wooden dolls. His golem can hold at least 3. Immediately, enthusiastic cheers were heard from the girls. The guy started summoning his golem. He wanted to prove that he was the right partner for Fuyuna. At the same moment, an earthen golem appeared from the ground. It was of enormous size. The earth golem, approaching its target in the form of wooden dolls, destroyed the simulators with one wave of its stone hand. The girls, along with Sakuya, shouted enthusiastically when they saw this. After that, Gokudo's instructor called Sakuya next. She told the guy not to pretend anymore, because the guy was pretending to admire the students who came out on the training ground. Sakuya flinched at Gokudo's words. He was caught. Then the scarred man informed Sakuya that he had put up as many as 5 wooden dolls especially for him. Gokudo's instructor wished the guy to try to be an example for others. Sakuya was stunned by his actions, but then he accepted everything. This time, everyone was looking at him, so the guy came up with a strategy to perfectly hide his abilities. Sakuya took the sword and walked calmly. Then he quickly ran aimlessly towards the training dolls. Sakuya pretended to trip over his feet while running and then fell. However, the fall did not go the way he wanted. After all, the black-haired guy continued to roll forward a little after the fall and then slightly hit the leg of one of the dolls. At the same moment, a protective measure against him was activated. The magic circle appeared on Earth, and the acceleration thinking, devil formula, and purgatory counterattack were activated to protect it. The guy realized that it was a bad situation to apply a protective measure. The students looked at what was happening with surprise and incomprehension. When suddenly one of them noticed something in the sky. Huge swords magically appeared in the sky. They, being at a certain height from the training ground, hovered in the sky, waiting for the moment of attack. In the next second, huge sword-shaped pillars headed towards the wooden dolls, instantly destroying them. An explosion was heard on the training ground from their collision. Sometime after the practical lesson, the students were already in the academy building. They enthusiastically recalled the recent incident. Now they understood why Sakuya chose Fuyun. They were thinking about the power of the black-haired guy that Sakuya summoned swords with summoning magic. but the students had never seen anything like this before. Although Puello's golem was magnificent, it couldn't compare to Sakuya's magic. Polo was upset, because it was he who should have stood out in the practical lesson, not Sakuya. The blonde guy decided never to forgive Sakuya for this incident, despite his personality. But Sakuya was from a special group, so no one knew him. They don't even have a dorm room. Polo was immediately delighted. He was glad that they couldn't get a dorm room. However, his lackey friends reminded Po with fright that Sakuya was strong. The blonde guy thought about it. He couldn't understand what they were talking about. To which he was told that they were talking about the case when Sakuya summoned a sword from the sky. The blonde guy looked at them with incomprehension. He did not remember about the situation. The friends exchanged glances with each other. Now they didn't remember the moment with the summoning of swords. The class was calm, as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Sakuya was in the hallway. After the incident, the guy was sitting in a corner in sadness. He kept thinking that the disciples had seen his true strength. Sakuya didn't know what to do in this case. Then, calming down a little, the black-haired guy decided to pretend to be a fool. He thought that the rumors about him would finally pass away and be forgotten after a while. Suddenly, someone called out to Sakuya, from which the guy immediately shuddered with his whole body. He didn't expect to be found soon. The one who called out to him was Sushana. Sakuya tried to explain to the girl about the recent incident, but she didn't understand what he was talking about. The guy was stunned. Sakuya continued to speak. He told the girl that it was about the previous lesson, from which Sushana immediately blushed. The girl with freckles remembered the previous lesson. Sushana shyly thanked the guy for all the applause he had done back then. The girl with freckles then felt so happy about it. Sakuya didn't understand anything. Then Sushana said goodbye to the guy with flushed cheeks. That was all she wanted to say. Sakuya was stunned by her words. He thought she would talk to him about the swords he had summoned. It was evening, and it was dark outside. Sakuya was in the dorm room. After talking with Sasha, the guy asked the others about the incident, but they had already forgotten about it. The guy did not understand the reason for their loss of memory about the incident. The only spell activated at that moment was the Devil's Formula. Suddenly, Sakuya remembered something. The black-haired guy remembered Astarte's Devil Formula skill, the effect of which was unknown. The guy realized that the effect of this skill was in memory correction. This skill was very suitable for Sakuya's path. No matter what he does, everyone will forget about it. Now he can always go into the background. Sakuya thanked the demon Astarte with a joyful exclamation. Her skill had helped him out in a previous situation. Now he doesn't have to worry about accidentally finding out his true strength. A couple of days later, standing near the entrances and the stone wall, where a lot of locals pass. And also, there's a guard next to the main character. The guy thinks to himself that since he received a request from the city today, then you will need to complete a quest. Usually, ordinary students participate in them, as well as adventurers. The quests themselves are mostly tasks that adventurers undertake, but less difficult and safe quests are often used to teach students. And in this case, they will need to deliver fresh food to the farmer to the mill. Thinking about it a little more, the main character comes to the conclusion that there should be nothing complicated in this, and suddenly someone distracts him from his thoughts by calling him by name. It was one of the girls who came up to him. The taller one knew his name and was already familiar with him, so she just greeted the guy, and the one below introduced herself and said her name was Pico, but her profession is a traveling merchant, and she is very pleased to save up with the main character. Sakuya greets the girls and says that he is also pleased to meet her, but they are distracted from the conversation by someone's voice saying that they have finally all gathered, and now a man in a suit and glasses is already standing in front of them, and he tells them that he is their fourth-year escort on Garrick's quest and that he is their muscles, and then he confidently, and at the same time winking at them, declares that he will protect them, even if it means his end, and they do not need to worry, because they are under hereditary protection. All three bow to him and thank him. Sometime later, the four of them are already riding in a carriage and heading to the designated place. Then, Sakuya asks the attendant, is it possible for them to travel by carriage if they have classes? He answers him that there is no rule prohibiting doing this, and besides, scientists are busy with their dissertations at this time of the year, so he doesn't have much time to waste so frivolously, and the classification table of the Third Academy is platinum is at the very top of this pyramid, gold behind it, silver, expert, and copper. Took third place altogether, and already At the very end, there are students. Then the girl says that if they are attacked by robbers, then they will be completely safe because they are in the carriage. The guy gives them sweets and tells them to help themselves, for which both girls thank him. Then the main character reflects that if it comes to that, then he has a start, and even if they are attacked by a dragon, Sakuya can always entrust his life to the upperclassmen. They keep driving. Then their escort declares that now, after they have eaten, they can go to bed, and immediately he lies down on the seat of the carriage. And both girls leaned on the main character. And they fell into a sweet sleep, not letting him move from the word at all, which strained him quite a lot, and this situation caused him mixed feelings. But suddenly he heard a sound, and it made him tense up. And this pack of robbers was approaching the carriage, clearly not with good intentions. Then the coachman screamed loudly, while asking what exactly the bandits were doing here. Sakuya realized that they were in danger, so he started shouting loudly and telling everyone to wake up, and all because they were attacked. After that, the three got out of the carriage, and the escort stayed there. And when Peko loudly declared that they were bandits, the senior stuck his head out, not believing what he had just heard, and then looked closer and realized that the girl was right. And there were bandits in front of them. The girls don't understand what to do. So they ask Senpai about it, and he, in turn, starts to get nervous and says that he and Sakuya will stay here, and they will have to run away with the crystal that he holds in his hands to the academy to call for help. But the main character only thinks that this is a great chance to prove himself, and he is determined. While the girls were taking the crystal and starting to slowly disappear, they say that he will immediately go for help and ask them both not to die while they are gone. And now the girls are gone. Then the senior student gets into a combat readiness position and says that it's time for him and Sakuya to go into battle. But one of the robbers points his sword in their direction and sticks it into the ground. After that, the escort falls to the ground with fear, along with the messenger, and they both lie hugging their bellies, and fear is visible on their face. The main character thinks that this is strange, and they did not last long. Besides, it's all too strange. One of the robbers calls his boss and says, pointing to the senior student lying on the ground, that this young man with glasses is the son of that very big official. Then he suggests that he just kidnap him and take a very good ransom for him. Sakuya heard all this and realized that they had come for Senpai, and there was nothing special about it, because he is an aristocrat. Then the main character, sighing heavily, says that although they are certainly not dragons, but there must be strong guys among them. The boss of the bandits does not understand what he is talking about. But suddenly, Sakuya rarely disappears from their field of view, and all the robbers do not understand where he has gone. And because of this, they turn their heads in different directions, trying to figure out where he has gone. But the main character's voice is heard, forcing them to distract themselves, who tells them to pay all their attention to where his voice is coming from. And now they see him, and two bandits next to him, who are both shaking and falling to the ground in pain. Everyone else does not understand what just happened. After that, they go to attack him, armed with their sabers. But the guy only had to wave his hand, as all the bandits flew away from him for some distance and could no longer harm him, and it was holy magic that sent a shockwave into the enemy. The advantage is that the cast is short, and the spell is quite easy to use. All those bandits that he had used holy magic on were now lying on the ground. From the boss, raising his hand up, signaling to his guys, he told Sakuya that he had quite interesting abilities, but this would not stop them. The other bandits saw their boss's hand raised up, and one part started using magic, aiming at the main character, while the others used a bow and arrow, still aiming at Sakuya. But the guy deftly dodged all the blows and remained unharmed. Running away from that place, the boss of the bandits asks him how he feels, after which he appears right in front of him, armed with his sword and ready to stab him. Although the guy does not have time to dodge the attack, but he decides to confront him with his sword. And the boss of the bandits thinks to himself and laughs that the sword of the main character will never be able to stop his axe. And so the axe and the sword merged together, and literally in a moment, the axe of the robber boss was completely destroyed, and Sakuya's sword remained unharmed and intact. All the bandits were horrified after what they saw and could not believe what they had just seen. And this was crushing. That is, a new skill acquired by Sakuya after he changed his profession. And as the name suggests, it adds a crushing effect to its attacks, destroying everything it touches, Generating such an effect is at the discretion of the user. After that, the guy is surrounded by an ominous aura, and he looks very intimidating in the eyes of all the bandits, and he can't figure out what kind of guy he is and where he got so much power at all. And then the main character asks the robber boss if he is still seriously hoping for something. But in his case, it is pointless, because help will soon arrive to him, after which he points in that direction. In that direction, people on horseback are approaching them, and then their boss realizes that things are bad and that Sakuya is not joking. And then he decides to just run away from there and gives orders to all of his own, and they all safely leave the scene. And the man on the horse comes closer to the main character and asks if everyone is safe. Then he calls Sakuya and Garrig by name. The guy runs towards them. At and dismounting from the horses, the girls run to meet him. They turn up next to him at the speed of light and shout his name. Pico says that she was very worried about him, and the other is just glad that he is all right, and both of their eyes are wet. But then Sakura smiles at them and reassures them, saying that as they may notice, everything is fine with him, and they have nothing to worry about, and all because Senpai drove them away. Then the man who got off the horse couldn't believe what the main character was saying, because he couldn't stand up against those bandits in any way. And that's because he was always the first to switch off when it came to combat. Sakuya then asks if their escort wasn't the best in the class. But these words made the man laugh, and he asked him not to talk nonsense, because the young man was always in the last places. After the man told them everything, all three fell silent for a while. And Sakuya realized that the senior was nothing like himself, and realized that in this school, he would really be able to prove himself. Fanya quickly climbed onto the horse, and with a smile on her face, she said that since the main character was here, they had nothing to worry about. But Sakuya denies everything and says it's Senpai's doing. Then the girl says that it can be like that. However, the main character should still be proud of his achievements. This makes Sakuya uncomfortable. A laugh escapes from his mouth, and he agrees with her. Then Fina begins to reflect that it is quite difficult to fight off almost 10 strong bandits alone, and besides, she realizes that the guy is quite strong. And then she says that Sakuya is really the partner she needs. But still, she thought it was too early for him to actually fight, but now she realizes she doubted him. And now, with full enthusiasm and confidence, she offers him to go to the dungeon. These words took the main character by surprise, so he stopped and asked again, not expecting to hear them. The guys are sitting contentedly in the dining room of the Third Academy and eating many different dishes and delicacies. But now it was time for the lesson, so they all went to different classrooms. Someone is sitting at the table. Someone is walking and talking loudly. Before the lecture itself begins, the main character is sitting in his desk and holding a book in his hands, thinking that today he definitely needs to be as inconspicuous as possible. And so while there is a very loud noise in the office, and all the guys gathered in a bunch and pay absolutely no attention to it, Sakuya decides to escape from the audience. He had just a little bit left to get out of there and be free, as his path was blocked. Do not understand where his classmates came from. There were 3 of them in total, and the one in the middle. He told the main character to wait, making it clear that he would not go anywhere. This begins to strain Sakuya, because he could not have expected something like this at all. Then this guy decides to ask the main character, why does he meet with Fina every day? And he wonders how he does it, because the girl doesn't even look at him, and yet he doesn't understand why she doesn't pay attention to him. It shows that the guy is very upset about this. But Sakuya only thinks to himself that his classmate will stop whining. And while they are standing in front of each other, the main character does not know what to say to him. Therefore, he stands silently and does not move, while this guy sheds tears and is sad. Then Pico takes off into their conversation and explains to him, saying that it's pretty simple, and most importantly, that Sakuya is clearly kinder than him, and there's nothing you can do about it. The guy did not like the girl's words. Then he decided to provoke her with his question about whether she, in turn, had fallen in love with Sakuya. Pico doesn't like this at all, and she asks if he's running into her by accident and what he's trying to tell her. And then suddenly the doors to the lecture hall open, and the person standing behind them asks, "Is there a Sakuya here?" Upon entering the room, everyone sees that this person turned out to be none other than a hairdryer. Before she has gone far, she notices the main character and calls him by name, while not noticing anyone in her path. Then she comes closer to the guy and grabs his hand, and also beaming with happiness, declares that she's received permission from the academy to declare him her partner. Sakuya does not understand what she is talking about, and her words put him in a stupor. But this outcome of events does not suit Pekka, and then she pushes the hairdryer and the main character apart and asks the girl to wait a little. And all this is because there is a rule that says that you cannot declare new students as a partner. Then Fina says that everything is correct, and that is why she spent a whole month convincing the academy of her decision. Pico did not understand what she meant by the word convincing, because it sounds quite strange. After that, the hairdryer explains to her that after many reports and presentations, they finally agreed. With tears in his eyes, Pico can't believe it, and the hairdryer grabs the guy's hand, and pleasant to herself, declares in front of everyone that this year she will definitely win the United School Festival. And then he tells everyone else to look forward to this event. After that, all those present at that moment in the audience began to cheer loudly and rejoice. And Fina, still holding the main character by the hand, took him out of the audience and said that it was time for them to go. But Sakuya did not understand where they were going. Then the girl said that she would start teaching him everything she knows herself. Sometime later, they are on the training field. They both hold swords in their hands and attack each other, thereby training. Then the main character asks, indeed that partners are allowed to train 24 hours a day and 7 days a week without stopping. Fina says that everything is exactly as he said. These words shock the guy, and unable to ask his question out loud, he wonders if this means that they will spend time together from early morning until late at night. But in the guy's head there was only a hairdryer which was wrapped in a towel. After that, the girl perfectly understood what he was thinking and hitting him on the head with a sword, asked the main character to stop imagining something strange in his head. This shocked her, because she did not expect this from Sakuya, after which she said that everything was right. And turning around, she continued to say that tomorrow they would go to the dungeon, and that she will come for the main character early in the morning. So she gives him time to rest and strength to squat because of the severe pain. Sakuya says that he understood everything, and will do as she said. Continuing to rub his head, he thinks to himself that, on top of everything else, he is wondering why the hairdryer is so obsessed with winning this festival. And it seems to him that there really must be something behind such passion. And yet, he decides to ask her about it. And now it's the morning of the next day, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, which means that it's time for the main character to get up, and that's why the hairdryer personally came to wake him up. And while Sakuya was sleeping peacefully and sweetly on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, and then the girl loomed over him and loudly declared that it was morning and it was time to get up and get ready. Getting up heavily from the bed and rubbing his eyes after waking up, the main character begins to carry incoherent nonsense, saying that he wants peaches and starts looking for something with his hands. And he bumps into the heavy cage of the hairdryer, and after touching it several times, the guy still did not understand what was in front of him. But the girl herself was incredibly confused and angry. Therefore, she screamed at him loudly, while asking what he was doing, and then called him a lustful monkey. And afterwards, the hairdryer hit Sakuya in the face. That is, she slapped him in the face, from which he left a big mark, and now he has already gathered and decides that now he will improve his stretching, because the hairdryer said that this would be a daily procedure. Grabbing the guy by the arms and pulling him towards her, the hairdryer said that she could not even think that he had such a body. Then the guy explained to her that this is the only thing he has and asks her to stretch him harder. After all, his flexibility is developed by 10 out of 10. The hairdryer heard him and began to pull even more. But since the girl was in a skirt, the guy could see what she had there. Realizing this, the girl abruptly stood up and let the guy go, which caused him to bury his face in the floor, and she said she would change her clothes and asked him to wait a little. Some time later, after the girl changed into a more comfortable uniform and it was pants, then she invited Sakuya to move out. The guy looks at her with admiration and realizes that this is exactly the senpai he needs. And so they were already walking to the designated place. Then the hairdryer said that she would accompany the sophomores during the dungeon raid on campus. Then the guy asks if this is not usually what teachers do. She explained to him that she was given this role because Mr. Gokudu was not there. But Sakuya does not understand if everything is okay because he is a first-year student. Then Fina says that everything is fine, because for the sake of winning the school festival, the girl wants him to experience the harsh conditions of a real fight. Sakuya is not against it, because this is a chance for him to test his skills. And now they are already in the dungeon on the second floor of the campus. Fina, using her sword, kills the monster and saves the girl, for which she thanks her. And the hairdryer says that she needs, first of all, it is necessary to make a habit of being vigilant. The girl agrees with her. And the guy, looking down the aisle, just thinks that now everything will be really interesting. But suddenly, monsters appear. To be more precise, the skeletons of the average level. They're heading straight to the guys. They try to fight them back, but they don't do it well. And Fina notices that they are being attacked from behind, so she tells them to be careful. After that, she gets down to business and kills all the skeletons. And these guys admire the girl and don't understand what kind of guy is next to her, because he's just a freshman. And they wonder if he doesn't get in the way of the hairdryer under their feet. And the main character is only amused because after hearing them, he only thinks that everything is right and, apparently, Operation Nondescript is going well. Fina ran at the speed of light to attack the skeletons. Armed with her sword, she pushed off the ground, and she was going to use a secret stealth technique. To be more precise, it is an ultra-fast lumbar stroke, and thanks to this blow, all the skeletons imperceptibly lose their balance and slowly begin to fall after hitting the girl, because of which she cut their bodies into two parts. Sakuya is glad that Fina used this particular blow, because he had long wanted to do this behind-the-scenes action. Watching the girl from the side, he notices that something strange is happening to her today, and she moves in a different way. Running closer to the skeleton, the hairdryer stumbles on the floor and almost falls. The skeleton notices this too and wants to attack her in time, but the girl manages to dodge in time and stab him. And the main character runs to her, realizing that if she continues in the same spirit, something may happen to her. Therefore, he needs to hurry up. The other guys are also running to her aid, and Sakuya has not calculated the distance. He's approaching a collision with a girl, who also notices this and cannot praise him for it. And in order not to hurt him, she throws her sword aside. After that, Sakuya lies under her, and they look into each other's eyes for a while. And the main character touches the girl's heavy cage. So that they don't bump foreheads, Fina understands what just happened. So she instantly pulls away from him and can't say anything coherent, and only embarrassment and shame can be seen on her face. Getting up from the ground, Sakuya says that as he thought, he got the feeling that the hairdryer was without clothes. This greatly embarrasses the girl, which is why she hits him, and he flies into the wall and creates a huge crack, and the hairdryer calls him a lustful animal. But the girl explains to him that the main character is to blame for the fact that she forgot to put on a bra when she changed in the morning. Sliding down the wall, Sakuya finally understands what was the reason for all the oddities. In changing the subject of their conversation, she said that it was still good that she took him with her. After all, this will create a good base. The guy does not understand what she is talking about, but Fina explains to him that she will finally be able to teach him how to use a real sword. A couple of days later, after school, Fina holds a real sword in her hands and says that the sword is in an easy grip, after which there is a soft touch followed by a dance like a stream. And at the very end, there is already a blow. The girl effectively shows everything to the main character, and he, in turn, looks with curiosity and argues that the movement that the girl showed is her own style. And now he understands the reason why Fina wants to win this festival. But the girl distracts him from his thoughts and says that, starting from this moment, this is his goal. Sakura says he understands everything, and the girl wants to say what their training session will be today, but the guy doesn't let her do it, stopping her and then says he wanted to ask her something. Fina clarifies what he wanted to ask. Then the guy replies that he noticed it from the very first days, but he doesn't understand why the girl is doing this festival. She tells him that it's all for the sake of winning the school. But the main character clarifies, is this the only reason this question puts the girl in a stupor? But still, she replies that it's exactly like that, and Sakuya says that he doesn't think so. After all, they took second place last year, although he had heard that the girl was doing a great job. And yet, Fina is the only one who is so depressed about it. And yet, Sakuya insists on it, so that the girl tells him as a partner, because he wants to know the truth. They stood in silence for a while until the guy said he wanted to learn about Jurassic fencing. This request makes the hairdryer tense up very much. She raises her eyes with fright on her face and asks if he knew about it. Sakuya says no, but thanks to constant training with her. I began to guess, and today's training allowed him to make sure of this, because this was the endless sword that the girl showed him. After hearing this, the girl smiled easily, and she said that the guy is really smart. And then she says that everything is true, and this is her fencing style. In this world, there are modelers of sword schools, and one of them, which is considered the basis of the rest. This is the school of Jurel Genri. More than 300 years ago, the swordsmanship of the hero of Jurel, who defeated the demons, was passed down from generation to generation, and for a long time this school was the most powerful. However, in the land of swords, Lyrasis, a new, even more powerful fencing school, was born, which has a Jurala fencing style. It is based on the Juralu style, but it is dominated by a series of attacks in which the emphasis is on speed. Sakuya says that many students are trained at the school, but not all of them pass this training. The hairdryer says there are 3, and only women are heirs who pass on the essence from generation to generation, and speed is the basis and secret of this school. Now it becomes clear to the guy. Why have women been the strongest swordsmen for half a century? Then he asks if the girl is an heiress, to which she answers him with a smile on her face, that when she was 11, she swore never to cry again. Sakuya does not understand what she is saying, but the girl continues to tell that she took up the sword because her parents told her that she was the best. The guy says that this is true, but the hairdryer does not listen to him and continues to talk when she was 8. And no matter how hard she tried, there was no way she could get around it. The guy wants to clarify something with her, but she gets ahead of his words and says that he understood everything correctly. She was the second princess of the country, Finn's the princess of the sword. She is the greatest master of the Jurel fencing school. Phineas is proficient not only with the sword, but also with his emotions when Fina cried from disappointment after defeat. Phineas would take her away and explain in detail what she had done wrong and give advice and always say at the end that Fina is strong because she is her rival. The mayor is nice to hear that, and she continued to train every day. But when a girl named Cartier, a year younger than Fina, entered her life, she began to lose more and more, and as a result, she was no longer Phineas's partner. Although it was painful for her to watch her fights with Cartier, but Phineas said she was waiting for a hairdryer, so she worked harder than ever. But when she was 10, she was defeated by a girl who was 2 years younger than her, which came in quite recently. This girl was the daughter of the director of the first academy, and her name was Benit. And no matter how much Fina tried, she couldn't win, and every evening she saw an expression of joy on her face. Fina couldn't stop crying, because Benit was a person who never put in any effort, because she preferred real battles and demon hunting and never saw any interest in training. Fina kept trying, but she saw a genius. The guy tries to calm her down, but he can't do it, and she goes on and says that Vinny gave her the nickname Crybaby Dropout. It was a cruel nickname for a hairdryer. The girl says that the main character can safely laugh at her if he wants, but he says he won't do it, because it happened to him too. And then Fina continues her story and says that outsider is exactly what those who are not chosen as the heir of the school are called. And although the girl was afraid that she would be considered inferior or weak, she was much more afraid that Phineas would think about changing his mind. Or maybe that's why she couldn't even talk to Phineas when they met by chance. After all, the hairdryer was not her level. But the girl continued to train hard and for a long time, no matter what, and asked her parents to give up cooking, manners, and such other activities, so that Fina could devote all her free time to the sword. And in the summer of the same year, Phineas was proclaimed the first heir of this academy, after which Cartier became the second in line for this title. But Vinny and Fina were already fighting for the remaining place, and eventually, Veneta won with her genius sword and became the third heir at the academy. Fina cried for 3 days and 3 nights after her failure, and it seemed as if nothing could calm her down and bring her to her senses. After that, the girl decided to leave the dojo without even saying goodbye to her master. And in the end, she chose the third academy instead of the first, which she had already been accepted into. And after that, she and Phineas never saw each other again. But since then, Fina has become strong enough to fight and defeat Phineas, and this is her main and original goal. And all because she has flattered to herself that she will never cry again under any circumstances. And she did all these things in order to say goodbye to her past. After listening to the whole story, the main character says with a smile on his face that now it became clear to him where the girl got such zeal for the festival and such a strong desire to win, and yet Fena does not stop there and continues, saying that last year at that very festival, Cartier hit her from behind before she had time to fight with Phineas with swords, and she never managed to achieve her original goal. Sakuya sees the girl's drooping face and tells her that this year, everything will be different because he is her partner and she has nothing to worry about. These words of comfort make the hairdryers start to smile. Besides, this year she is determined to finish what she started and win, and Fena still wants to say something. But she is interrupted by the rain, which suddenly began. And because of this, they are both soaked through and through. And with a frustrated expression on her face, the girl says that she should end her story with this. But she would definitely tell it this time. Sometime later, after they had already left the rain for the building, despite this, all of the clothes were completely wet. And now they have already approached the door, as they see an announcement on it that at the moment the house is being cleaned with wax and therefore entry is prohibited. This throws Fena into shock, and Sakuya can't figure out what's going on. After all, he always slept in this place. And awkwardly rubbing the back of his head, he says that it looks like he will have to settle for a shoe shelf today. But suddenly the girl calls his name, and she tells him to come to her room. And after a while, when they are both already in the hairdryer room, the girl herself has just come out of the shower, and a towel is still hanging on her head. And she herself is dressed in comfortable pajamas. Then the main character asks her forgiveness for all the inconveniences caused to her, because she not only allowed him to use the shower, but also gave him a place to spend the night. Funa says that everything is fine and there are no problems, but still she wonders if he really likes the books of the Jural School so much, because he is so passionate about reading them. Forces with a towel on his head and glowing with happiness, the main character declares that he is always full of enthusiasm. If it comes to books of the Jural School, the girl comes closer to him, and taking hold of his wet towel, softly and tenderly pronounces his name, and then begins to pull at the towel and notices that water is still dripping from his hair, while she was wiping his head. So that it would be convenient for her to do this, she decided to sit on her knees, which would make all her underwear visible. But unfortunately for Sakuya, nothing was visible. And because of this, he expresses displeasure to the girl, saying that he couldn't see anything. These words made the call girl laugh, and she said she thought the guy was busy reading a book. But it turned out that she was wrong, although this was to be expected from the main character, because he always behaves like this, and all this is due to the fact that he is not fully focused. Then Sakuya responds to her that at the moment there is just such a single source of concentration failure in front of him. It is not hidden that he is talking about a hairdryer, after which the girl begins to pull him hard on the head. And this causes discomfort for the guy, and he says that it hurts him. But the girl ignores all this, and this only makes her laugh even more and want to make fun of the main character. After a while, already lying in bed and wrapped in a blanket, Fina apologizes to Sakuya and tells him that he will still sleep on the floor. But you can't tell from the main character's face that he's feeling bad. And he, wrapped up in a blanket more, says that there is nothing wrong with that, because she already gave him a mattress and allowed him to spend the night in her room, so he has nothing to complain about. Then, Fina becomes interested, and she decides to ask Asko how he usually sleeps, to which the main character replies that he usually just wraps himself in blankets. This makes the girl a little tense and scared at the same time, and she says that, starting from this moment, this mattress is now Sakuya and belongs to him. The guy at first can't believe it, and yet he rejoices at such a sudden gift from a girl. It had been some time since they went to bed. It was already completely dark outside the window, and it was still raining. Both of them were awake and lay silently, not making a sound. Then, Fina breaks this silence and says that there will be a Venite at the festival this year, and she is sure of her assumption by all that percent. But Sakuya doesn't answer her. Then the girl continues and says that this can only mean one thing, that the first academy will have all 3 heirs. And holding his fist up, she declares that she will show them all the art that she has been honing for so long. The main character, following her example, also pulls his fist up and says that if this is the purpose of the sword of the hairdryer, then he can handle it too. The girl says that the main character chose the words well, to which Sakuya replies that he is confident in his ability to come up with names. And yet, Fina says that this is childish, and then asks him if he is not disappointed, because she has never given up on her desire to meet Phineas' expectations. But Sakuya says that none of this is true, and that it will eventually make her the greatest swordsman of all time. But Fina says that she actually has to apologize to the main character for standing in the way of his personal feelings. But Sakuya calms her down, saying that everything is wrong and that he also wants to become strong. So he is grateful to her for this, and asks her not to apologize to him. A girl wants a guy by name, and he turns to face her. The girl does the same, and now they look at each other. A bright smile froze on their faces, which did not leave their faces for a long time. And yet it is true, and this is the whole point of the nondescript hero. A couple of days later, after school, Fina and Sakuya train again. And as soon as the fight is over, the girl only sullenly and heavily sighs. Turning to face the main character, Fina said that with his current abilities, he could easily already start studying with undergraduates. These words confuse the guy a little. Nevertheless, he thanks her for her praise. And standing near the oak tree, the girl says that their training today is over, and that he can be free. It was Sakuya who sent it. After that, he turned around happy and joyful, and walked away from the hairdryer in the opposite direction. The main character goes forward and reflects that today, they could not use their usual place, so they had to train in the back of the gym. And he liked it in principle, because it's quite convenient to be away from prying eyes, but it seems to him that this has its drawbacks. Fina was walking behind Sakuya, but he did not notice her, completely immersed in his thoughts and reflections, and now he had gone so far that the girl was unable to catch him. Then Fina plunged into her own thoughts and watched the departing protagonist, and all her thoughts were filled with the festival and the fact that it was only 3 months away. But she is absolutely sure that Sakuya will reach such a level that she will be able to fight as much as Kadia herself, and if he continues to train as hard and efficiently, then, even without her hidden strength, she will be able to easily defeat everyone and win, completely immersed in her thoughts. She came closer to the gate and stood motionless, and because of this, did not notice that some people approached her next to her. And suddenly this man, who came up to her from behind, told Fina that they had not seen her for a very long time, and it even made her miss her. The girl was horrified after hearing what she had heard, and it was clear from her expression that she knew the man standing behind her perfectly well. And now she turned to face them. And I saw my most important rival there. That is, Venit. She stood very confidently, leaning her hand on her hip. She was wearing a black leather top and the same pants that completely fit her figure, and she also put on a black leather jacket over it, and her hair was pulled into a single pigtail, and behind her stood 3 guards dressed in suits and sunglasses. They created a frightening appearance dressed in sunglasses. They created a frightening appearance. This did not please Fina at all, and she contemptuously asked what Venit was doing here and for what purpose she had come here. But the girl was only amused by Fina's face, and she had a big smile on her face. After which, she said that it was very interesting, and she continued to speak with a certain amount of skepticism that she had heard that her old friend was studying at the Commoner 3rd Academy, and she came all this way to say hello to the hairdryer. While the girl was telling her all this, a smile did not slip from her face, to which she replies with a sullen expression that it looks like a girl. And then the girl notices the sword in the hands of the hairdryer and asks if she really still continues to play with the wooden sword. It was nothing but mockery. Fina understood perfectly well that Benit wanted to make fun of her, but only gave up her lips so as not to say anything superfluous. But this in turn only amused Benit, and she can't believe it, that the hairdryer has already started preparing for the festival, and she wonders if the girl will cry again, because she has defeated her more than once, although she is younger than her. But the angry hairdryer asks not to think, that she remained the same as before. But Venit just starts laughing out loud at this, and says that the hairdryer couldn't even show her the Jurassic style earlier, after which he calls her a wimp, who does not know her place, and it looks very hilarious, in her opinion, to which the hairdryer tells her that it's not about style. It's about constant daily discipline, and that this is the only way to improve yourself. Venette goes to the barrel of swords and asks to be allowed to say something to her, and that she will fight Phineas this year. But Fena only asks if she really came to fight her. To which Manhwa replies that she is not going to wait until the school festival to prove the weakness of the hairdryer and grab the first sword from the barrel. She directs it towards the girl, and he says he's going to test her physical abilities right here and now. And then she says that her father also came with her. Then Fina clarifies if he was not the first director, but Vanit only says that her father wanted her to teach a lesson to some student. At that moment, the malicious smile did not disappear from her face. Fina angrily declared that Vanit was lying and that her father was a decent man, unlike the girl. But Vanit did not like these words, and her smile was instantly replaced by a serious expression on her face, and she rushed towards the hairdryer at full speed. At the same time, she lived using the first style from the Jural fencing school, and she did not feel sorry for her opponent at all, but seemed to use even more strength attacking her. The hairdryer barely manages to fight back and does not get hurt after all. But still, so far, she is able to do it, and it seems that the hairdryer managed to hit her back, as it plunges her into shock. The fact that Vanette was just disappearing in front of her and she didn't understand how this could happen, so she just stood still for a while. But suddenly, Vanette appeared next to her and declared that she was quite bored, and she wonders if the hairdryer really has not learned anything at all during all this time, and then calls her a crybaby half-educated. Waving her sword up, the hairdryer tells the girl to close her mouth, and all her thoughts at the moment were filled with Phineas, whom she had been dreaming of meeting all this time. And she jumped up, still holding the sword above her. She was going to stab Vanette. And at the same time, she said that it was finally time to surpass herself. And now she'd already approached Vanette and struck with her sword. But her opponent managed to jump back in time and remain unharmed. But then the realization came to Fina that this is the same legendary fencing technique and style belonging to the Jural fencing school in which she studied before. And once again, waving her sword over Vanette's flying body, Fina herself thinks that now, finally, she will be able to show her all her strength and power. And for the blow, she used a technique called butterfly dance. Vanette understood perfectly well what the girl was doing, and it cost her only a snail on her face, and a sentence came out of her mouth in which she talked about the very essence and turned over to face the hairdryer. Realizing that she could not resist the attacks of the Vanettes, the girl decided to retreat and did a somersault backwards, thereby retreating and rolling from one place to another. She buried her face in the ground. But she still could not afford to let go of her sword and only thought about it. But Vanette came up to her and asked the girl if she knew that Phineas was already waiting for her. But these words could not please Fina, so she told the girl to shut up and say nothing more. But Vanette continued and asked if she could really hear her, because Phineas is already her rival. Tears began to appear in Fina's eyes, which only amused Vanette even more, and she began to laugh loudly and openly at the girl, telling her not to cry, while calling her inferior. But suddenly a voice appears out of nowhere, telling the girl to stop. And so, Vanette turned her attention to the source of the sound, and she saw some guy who was wearing a cape covering his whole body. Vanette couldn't figure out who he was, so she asked him about it. But Sakuya only told her that they would deal with her. The main character came to the aid of the hairdryer, while completely wrapped in a cloak that was very long for him, and at the same time covered his face. The guy also stood in front of the girl, thereby shielding her from Vanette, and Fina could only silently watch what was happening now, and at the same time, she was sitting on the ground, unable to get to her feet. But suddenly, she saw Sakuya blocking her with his body, and indignation appeared on her face. After all, she did not understand from the word at all what the main character was going to do, and what was on his mind at all. He was very interested in finding out what he was going to do. That's why she watches his every action intently. And the guy, in turn, loudly declares, while addressing Vanette, that he does not like what she does and how she behaves. But Vanette, with 3 bodyguards standing behind her, did not hear his question. Or to be more precise, she did not want to hear it at all, but decided to ask in response what the guy thinks of himself. After all, she was already going to leave this place and try never to return. But since he was so negative towards her, this made the girl very angry, and her sullen grimace froze on her face. And she asked the main character if he really wanted to die right now. And besides, and her hands. But Sakuya only replied in a menacing voice that Vanette had made Fina cry, and that was why he was going to make the girl regret what he had done. The hairdryer itself, sitting behind the guy, She is shocked. Her eyes widen. Even though her whole face is stained with dirt, she sits in complete disbelief and does not understand what is happening now. To which Vernay responds to the main character with a grin on his face. That she was really sorry, but she didn't have time to play with him at all, and so the girl's bodyguards join the conversation. And one of them says that Venit is the daughter of the director. The second guard also joins the conversation and says that this is simply unacceptable. And now the bodyguard standing in the middle is going to take Sakuya by the scruff of the neck and put him away from Venat. At the same time, he says that the main character simply has to do something. But before he can say the rest of the sentence, he is already on the ground. Sakuya did it all, unable to tolerate these meaningless speeches from the guards anymore. He sent one of them flying. Venit herself turned at the loud knock and could not believe what she saw. And the fact that her bodyguard couldn't stand up to some guy from the Commoner Academy. The two remaining guards of the girl were also seriously afraid of further actions from the guy. But they tried not to show that they were uncomfortable with this, but only began to talk seriously with the main character, threaten him and insult him. But the situation made Venit laugh quite a lot. That this very laugh came out, and everyone was listening to it. But it didn't matter to her, and she was heading straight for Sakuya, at the same time pointing her wooden sword, which she took from the barrel at him. But the guy didn't even move away and did nothing, but just stood there motionless. But Venit, still pointing her sword at the guy, said that the main character is quite an interesting and funny person. As she said these words, the smirk on her face still remained. This was already beginning to annoy Sakuya himself, so he took out a wooden sword from his magic wand too, in order to be on equal terms with her. And in a menacing voice, he asked if Venit was sure in her judgments that he was a funny and interesting person. As she said, the hairdryer still continued to sit on her lap and look up at the guy, and shock was noticeable on her face because she could not believe what the main character was going to do at the moment. But the guy stood confidently, armed with his sword, and did not show any emotions. And Venit, still pointing her sword at Sakuya, continued to smile cunningly and openly. After that, she licked her lips and thought for a while. After which, she asked the prince on a white horse, referring to the main character, what kind of fencing school does he belong to? But Sakuya answered her seriously and menacingly that there was no way and that he had his own style of swordsmanship, which she would never overcome. These words only made Venit start to smile, but the expression on her face was truly frightening. And after that, she turned to him in half a turn and asked if it was really for nothing. After all, it was hard for her to believe it, after which she even asked why on earth a greyhound like him had the right to challenge her. But smiling for a moment, the main character declared that they will still see who is weak and a greyhound here. But Venit at the same time became more serious and only said that she did not like the way he talked to her because it was quite rude and ugly. Fina realized that the situation was escalating and becoming more serious, so she stretched out her hand to Sakuya and said that although she did not know him, she suggested that he run away from this place as soon as possible. After all, his opponent is the heiress of the Jural fencing school, and he cannot defeat her. But the main character only asked the hairdryer not to worry, because nothing terrible will happen. But the girl who is sitting on the ground still does not understand what kind of person is hidden behind the mask. But Sakuya, turning to face Venit, only says that he will make her regret everything she said earlier. But as soon as he turned around, Venit flew at him with all her might, pointing her sword straight at the guy. It was clear from her face that she was not at all happy with their dialogue between each other. Therefore, she said that she would stop flirting with each other. And because of such a fast attack, Sakuya does not have time to dodge, and it is because of this that the sword has already touched his forehead. But it only seemed that way because after a moment, he just disappeared and he was not in the same place. Venit could not have expected this at all. So for a couple of seconds, she just froze in disbelief. After that, she began to quickly turn her head, trying to find him, and mentally realized that the main character had simply disappeared. And after checking all sides and making sure that the guy was nowhere to be found, she abruptly realized that he was upstairs and was going to attack her from there. And she was completely right in her judgments that the guy was upstairs. But she didn't have time to dodge, and that's why the main character hit her on the head, which is why the Venit just flies back and drives on the ground. And Fina is still surprised that she did not see this man, and still does not understand who he is and what he is doing here. Having fallen to the ground and continuing to rub her forehead from the bruise, Venit sat motionless. and the guy, coming closer to her, only said that it was quite weak, and he was disappointed. But these words did not please the girl at all, and she twisted her face as if she had tasted something very sour. But the girl could not say anything in her defense. And starting to get to her feet, Vinit seriously stated, thereby warning the main character to stop using his all sorts of different tricks, because she was already tired of it. But Sakuya only began to incite her, thereby prompting her to act, and then asking where her arrogance had gone. Or was it just his imagination? But the girl was no longer able to tolerate attacks and insults in her direction, so as if she had broken loose, she flew straight to the main character with all speed and strength, planning to strike her own blow, and threatened him so that he would never dare to look down on her again. A mask with an evil expression froze on her face, and she wanted to attack him yet. The guy didn't flinch at all at the same time, and just a moment later, he grabbed her sword with his own hands, thereby stopping her attack, and it made him smile, feeling his victory. And Vinit only felt disappointment and indignation, as well as not understanding what was happening now. But for now, the girl was distracted by her emotions. The main character threw her aside with his wooden sword. Fina, still continuing to sit motionless on the ground and silently watch the duel between them. Because of this, she began to think to herself that the girl could not imagine at all that Vinit was absolutely powerless against Sakuya, and she can't do anything to him. And Vinit, finally overcoming herself and gathering her last strength into a fist, got up from the floor and barely standing on her feet and trying to balance herself so as not to fall. She only told the guy that his strength was not important here, because she would cut him with her storm. And the girl's face at that moment was quite intimidating and frightening. And she stood in a combat-ready position, after which she pointed her sword at him, making it clear that she was ready to fight back. But this only made the guy laugh even more, and he said that he understood everything, and then he clarified whether Venus was really a speed demon. And having also prepared for battle, he said that in that case, he was just going to take the sword away from her. These words make Vinit just fly off the rails and literally go crazy. So she loudly shouts, not the most friendly words addressed to the main character, to the whole area of the forest. After that, she instantly approaches the guy and starts hitting him at full speed, without giving even a second's respite so that he does not have time to strike back at her. But Sakuya just continued to stand still and not make any attempts to avoid her attacks. The hairdryer sitting a little apart from them was slightly shocked by the fact that the guy just froze in place, and he didn't move at all, because it was wild for her that he didn't move a step. And Vinette, in turn, continued to strike him all over the body with her wooden sword just as quickly and without hesitation. And still staying in his place and not moving, he continued to stand with a straight face, while Vinit continued to strike at him. But the guy decided to fight back, and using his sword, he hit her in the stomach, which made the girl have a hard time, and the main character, in turn, simply said that, starting from that moment, it was his turn to attack her. While he was saying these words, there was a sly and insidious smile on his face, and he also pointed his sword in her direction, making it clear that he was serious in his intentions. And this caught Venus by surprise, because she did not expect this from a guy at all, and, having prepared for battle, she could only viciously curse Sakuya, and now she did not have time to prepare for his attacks. A lot of blows were thrown at the girl. The guy used the technique of Vinit herself, and did not give her a second's rest so that she could not strike back at him. But the girl tried to fight back, unlike him. And Vinit only wondered to herself if he was really faster than her, even though they moved the same way. And the guy, as if realizing what she was thinking about, said that he didn't even feel the girl's speed. The hairdryer was still motionless and quietly watching this fight from the side, and one question still haunted her. Why did the strange man in a raincoat continue to fight in this way, with no other way? And, as she continued to watch this stranger deal countless Vinit blows, Fini was well aware that their difference in strength was very visible even to the naked eye. Besides, he could have destroyed her in the matter of seconds. And suddenly she becomes interested in what if this stranger has his own style and his own efforts. He's trying to show her his fight. While the hairdryer was thinking deeply about this question, the fight was in full swing, and having stopped attacking the girl, giving her a couple of seconds to rest, she in turn only began to breathe heavily and scream loudly, after which, with an angry expression on her face, she asked who taught him such swordsmanship, because she did not understand why he was so good. To which the guy replied that he had learned this himself and no one helped him in this. After hearing these words, the hairdryer sitting next to them finally realized that all this can be achieved only if you work hard and make an effort. And Vinit, at the same time, barely gets to her feet and is immediately picked up by one of her bodyguards and convinces her that she urgently needs treatment. But by throwing away his hand, thereby showing that she does not need help and no treatment, she still continues to stagger unsteadily to her feet. And finally, she manages to do it. And taking off her leather jacket, she only says that she will never be able to allow this in her life. After all, she is, the heiress of the Jural school. After that, the girl repeats again that she is the heir and begins to menacingly go straight to the guy. And there was only an ominous aura around her, and it was not difficult to guess that the girl was not in the most pleasant mood. And after she approached the main character, without thinking for a second, she immediately swung at him, again using the technique of the Academy of the Jural School, of which she is the heir, called butterfly dance. But even despite all these factors, the main character still remains standing like a pillar, as if completely unafraid to get hit and be injured. Fina sees this escalating situation, and he shouts loudly for the stranger in the raincoat to change his mind about his decision and run away from there as quickly as possible. But he in turn calls the girl by name and tells her to watch him, and his actions as closely as possible. After all, this is exactly the power of labor and effort, after which he rushes to attack the Vinette and strikes his blow called his own style of butterfly dance. An explosion occurs at the site of the impact, and the main character successfully lands on the ground, as if nothing had happened. After that, he gets up and moves away from the body of Vinite, who lies on the ground completely motionless. And it seems as if there is no life left in her. But Sakuya does not care at all, and he moves away from her, not even paying attention to the girl. Then he goes to the hairdryer, which is still sitting on the ground. And until that time, she didn't seem to move. But as soon as the main character came closer to her, tears began to drip from her eyes, and she said with a smile on her face that it was only work and effort. But then she suddenly wondered if she could do the same as he did, and gave her hand as tightly as possible into a fist, and remained sitting with a sad expression on her face. And at the same time, the bodyguards of the heiress of the Jural school picked up the girl from the ground and began to leave there, while saying that the guy in the raincoat would not get rid of the consequences so easily after what he had done to Vinette, and that he should be prepared for everything and not relax. The main character was about to leave there, but the hairdryer sharply called out to him and told him to wait, because she understood what he wanted to do. And finally getting up from the ground, although unsteadily, she continued to stand, and yet she still could not figure out who this man was, what was hiding behind the cloak, and did not tell anything about himself. And yet she decided to ask the stranger, who was already leaving, so that he would at least tell her his last name, and he, without turning to face her, began to say the name. But at first, he did not say it to the end. Because he stumbled. And after all, with a smile on his face, he said that his name was Ramota, standing behind the stranger in a raincoat. She repeated the name he had told her. And then, after making sure that he told her his name, she repeated it again, but this time with all her feelings and emotions, and wanted to say that he had achieved a lot with his efforts, and she admires him insanely much. But she did not have time to finish the sentence because this stranger in a raincoat just disappeared, as if he had never been here, and the hairdryer remained standing in silence for a while, until Sakuya, who was running to meet her, shouted at her from behind and said that he had heard some sounds and screams in this direction, so he came to check. The girl was a little confused by this. The guy noticed this and asked what had happened, but the girl replied with a sweet smile on her face that there was nothing he could worry about. This answer pleased the main character very much, so he did not continue to question the girl and just left her alone. And the hairdryer looked at the sky and just thought that even though she wasn't sure, it definitely couldn't be a mistake. After all, this is exactly what she is looking for. The so-called peak. These thoughts made her smile even more and continue to dream. But Tui suddenly realized that she was not alone and, turning her gaze to the main character, said that starting tomorrow she was going to double their training, thereby warning him and giving him a moral preparation. But the guy himself was not ready for such a setup on the part of the girl, so he does not loudly vent his dissatisfaction and asks why she made such a decision. Meanwhile, in the room of the second princess of Lyrasis, The girl is sitting in her room, which is located in the castle, and dressed in a light dress, quietly and peacefully drinking tea, sitting on a chair and not expecting anything at all. But a sudden knock on the door distracts her from her tea party, and it was her maid who told her that the investigation was completed, calling her mistress Lady Phineas. And the girl did not answer her, and only listened attentively. A girl with short hair and in a school uniform walked into Phineas's room, while calling her name and asking the girl for forgiveness for her tardiness, at the same time throwing her hand behind her head and gently scratching the back of her head, showing that she was really stung. And since this girl went into the room to the heiress herself, then apparently the girls are very close. And Phineas jumped up as quickly as possible from the spot and went to meet the girl who entered her room, because she was very much waiting for the report as soon as she saw this girl. She said she was glad that Cartier was back, and the girl with the bowler hats who had just entered the room winked at Phineas and said that she had brought very good news for her. After a while, both girls were sitting on chairs. Phineas was sitting in a nightgown, hanging her head down from some embarrassment and waiting for information from Cartier. And the girl sitting next to Phineas elegantly and unhurriedly sipped tea, not at all in a hurry to tell the heiress the most interesting and good news, and which she had told her earlier, and so he brought the mug to his mouth. After tasting the tea, Cartier said that this tea is very tasty. Phineas also couldn't stay away and decided to also drink tea, which was already brewed, and she says out loud that she wants to add some sugar to her mug, and adding it, she began to mix the contents in the mug thoroughly. And she, confused, did not even fully understand what she meant, and pretending as if she had not heard her proposal, she clarified whether she was really talking about her. But now, Phineas decides to change the subject of the conversation, and leaning closer to her interlocutor, asks what news she is going to tell her today, as promised. After that, she clarifies if there is something about Mr. Sakuya in the information she wanted to tell her. Cartier heard her attentively and cleared her throat, thereby clearing her throat to begin her speech. And with a sweet and kind smile on her face, she said that they had found several single men with the same name, which the heiress had mentioned earlier. Phineas lowered her head and looked at her knees after hearing what she just said, that everything was fine, and this information calmed her down a lot, and she was happy to hear it. Cartier, seeing how her friend was simply glowing with happiness after hearing from her, still could not hide her smile and began to laugh softly. But Phineas noticed it and it confused her a little. Then she decided to ask what was the reason Cartier was laughing at her, and if it was an accident. To which the girl responds to her with a happy loss of face that she had never seen before. For Phineas to be so infatuated with some guy. But after these words, the girl immediately became very serious and said that she should know that she was also interested in men. Therefore, she does not see anything criminal in this, but it only made Cartier start laughing even more, after which she explained the reason for her laughter, and that it was all related to that she had already rejected 3 dozen offers, and in fact her candidates for marriage were the most influential people in the world. But Phineas began to talk seriously, and Cartier listened to her seriously. But the heiress continued her story and said that it was all because she wanted to marry only the man she would love with all her heart, because this was her childhood dream. Cartier opened her mouth in surprise after hearing from Phineas. But when she saw her friend's reaction, the heiress immediately blushed, because she felt so embarrassed, and she covered her face with her hands. And deciding to change the subject, she only asked what she had just been talking about, realizing that Phineas was very confused. She also decided to change the subject of the conversation as well, and she said that nevertheless, Cartier was also interested in a man who could conquer Lady Phineas's heart to such an extent. After her words, the girl revealed her face, which was hidden behind her palms, but Phineas only glared at her with an evil look, and Cartier, trying to defend herself, simply said that she was just joking and she should not take this situation so seriously. But now Phineas again turns the topic of conversation and wants to clarify something about Sakuya again. The happy Cartier, opening her notebook, said that she understood her and she would start looking for all the found guys with the same name. And she started with the very first one on her list, and he turned out to be a merchant who is 36 years old. He's well off and with a beard, and only if Phineas likes merchants, then he suits her. But the heiress, with a smile on her face, tells Cartier to continue on. The girl heard her and continued her search with the second candidate, and he is 33 years old. He is a knight, or to be more precise, a spearman, and he has a burn mark on his left cheek. but Phineas interrupted her and told her to continue talking about the next one. Cartier heard him and continued. Since the last candidate, and he is currently 22 years old, and he is a magician, and then Phineas is struck by something, and she twitches in surprise. But Cartier continues and says that he is handsome, also with the right hair. Phineas, as soon as she heard about black hair, she immediately ordered him to be invited to the royal palace right now. Cartier, getting up from her chair, only said that she knew that the heiress would say so. Therefore, they had already invited him to the palace in advance. And when she came to the door, Cartier said that he was waiting for her in the guest room, and she was asking if the girl wanted to meet him right now. From this, Phineas only begins to shake violently, and she, unable to stand it, loudly declared that she simply could not go out to him in such clothes and ordered Cartier to immediately prepare a hot bath for her right now. And now, while in the palace baths, Cartier gently rubbed Phineas's skin. And then Cartier said that she froze to mention that there is another 12-year-old boy named Sakuya, and he studies at the 3rd Academy. Although this is unlikely, but it may be the same one. Then Phineas clarifies. The 3rd Academy is where Phineas studies, and that is why he cannot be 12 years old. To which Cartier fully agrees with her. Then the happy Phineas suggests that Cartier start washing and getting ready, after which she clarifies whether she will help her, and the girl responds with her consent. Happy Phineas asks her friends to make the guy fall in love with her at first sight, to which Cartier replies that she will definitely make her the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. And getting out of the bath, both girls looked confidently into the distance and were ready to meet this guy. And Phineas said that it was all love at first sight, and it was her honor to win him. After a few days had passed, Phineas was sitting in the VIP dining room with the 1st Academy, sitting at the table and all alone, carefully redoing the food that was on her plate. And her face was very gloomy, when suddenly someone knocked on the dining room and the heiress told the person standing outside the door to enter. As it turned out, it was Cartier, and quietly went into the dining room. She only quietly apologized. After that, noticing the gloomy expression on Phineas's face, she noticed that the girl was still disappointed after the incident, and the heiress, pouting her lips, only asked the girl not to remind her about it. And, remembering what happened when they met with the same Sakuya, Phineas literally fainted, saying that he was not the one she had been looking for so long. And this fall scared Cartier. But a little embarrassed, her friend tried to justify herself by saying that she thought this was the one Phineas was talking about. Changing the subject, the heiress decided to check with Cartier. Did she eat? And if not, she invited her to join her for a meal together. Cartier was happy about this and gladly agreed to it, sitting down opposite Phineas at the table. After that, the girl with short hair asked if she should continue her search, but this question confused Phineas insanely, after which she could not answer it for a long time. And then she said that it seemed to her that there was no point in trying to do anything anymore. But Cartier, with a smile on her face, said that one of her people had made contact with Saint Miel. Phineas couldn't hide her surprise and scream because of this, once again clarifying whether this was really the missing Melia. And when she didn't get an answer, she just kept thinking, deep in her thoughts, after which Phineas asked her friend if Miel herself had really given them information about Sakuya. Cartier said that only partially, and realizing what Cartier had said earlier, Phineas only began to smile maliciously and cunningly, and her friend also began to smile, looking at her and folding her hands. But covered with blush, Phineas could not understand what was the matter, or maybe something on her face because she was so embarrassed after Cartier started looking at her. But the girl explained to her that listening to Phineas, she just can't help but admire her wisdom. But this surprised the girl very much, and she could not believe what was said. But Cartier said that it was the truth, and the fact that Master Sakuya is different from other men. But Phineas does not quite understand what the girl means, and Cartier only began to smile maliciously. And then she said that it just couldn't be, but Phineas can't stand it anymore, so she asks Cartier to tell her about it as soon as possible. But the girl only apologizes to her and modestly begins to laugh, covering her mouth with her hand. And then Cartier continued and said that, in fact, Sakuya was part of the squad that defeated the Demon King. But this shocked Phineas, and she could not believe what she had heard. After that, she asked that, as far as she remembers, the only ones who embroidered were the hero and the saint. And now she realized that Sakuya was that great man. But suddenly, Cartier wanted to tell her something else. But Phineas is wondering what else she wants to tell her, and her friend continued and told her that the Demon King had lost, and mostly it was only because of Sakuya's power. But Phineas does not understand what the girl means, after which she asks that the defeat of the Demon King is not the work of Erebus. But Cartier explained to her that this was just a lie invented by himself. But this situation throws Phineas into shock, and she can't believe what she just heard, and indignation froze on her face. But Cartier continued her story, and said that according to Meal's story, Erebus was so scared of the Demon King that he even threw down his sword and just ran away. After which Phineas says that in the end, she somehow does not believe it, because he is still a hero. Then Cartier says that Sakuya is alive, and the saint would hardly lie to her just like that, so it does not seem to her that this is fiction. Then Phineas just sat there in shock. But then she asked the girl to wait a bit, and she decided to ask, whereas in the end, Sakuya killed the Demon King, to which Cartier quickly replied that Sakuya had simply subdued Astarte, to which Phineas screamed in admiration and clarified whether he had really subdued the most powerful servant of the Demon King, Astarte. After which she just says that it's impossible, because Sakuya would be more than just a hero. Then Cartier says that the girl noticed correctly, and she says that everything is exactly like that, and that Sakuya is more than a hero. And Phineas just gets excited about this information, and she says she just can't believe it. And Cartier kept talking, and she suggested to her friend to do so in order to get to the truth. She suggested to her whether she should spy on Sakuya, and Phineas clarified what the girl had said earlier, to which Cartier only smiled brightly, after which she said that she also wanted to get to know him better, but Phineas was not at all satisfied with this, and she said that it was simply impossible. But Cartier went on to say that it is very difficult to meet such wonderful people as Sakuya, and if she is with such a person for several months in a row, whether she wants to or not, then fall in love with them. After which, Phineas begins to deny it countless times, explaining that she found him and fell in love with him first, but this only made Cartier smile, and she agreed with her. And then she said that it made absolutely no difference to her whether she fell in love or not. And yet, yes, she reminds Phineas that she is younger than her. But this begins to annoy the heiress even more, and she loudly declares that she will not allow Cartier to do this under any circumstances, because Sakuya is entirely hers. Meanwhile, at the place where Sakuya and Fina train, the guy can't figure out if someone really remembers him. But suddenly, a girl flies at him sharply and attacks him, but he manages to fight her off in time and remain unharmed. But the girl starts to get a little annoyed that the main character is distracted from training, and she reminds him that their main goal is to win. Sakuya declares that naturally he knows everything. But turning her back on him, Fina said that they would eat soon. So she tells him to get ready, because Phineas and Cartier will also be at this festival. That's right, because tomorrow there will already be a festival, which Sakuya is so looking forward to. Sometime after the latest events, the day of the festival came, and the blonde warrior girl named Fina could not wait for the beginning of the festival itself. She energetically asked Sakuya if he had slept well and had a good breakfast, from which he, overwhelmed with questions, noticed her overflowing enthusiasm. The girl confirmed his thoughts, confidently noting that they would definitely win the festival this year, and even hoped that, among other things, she would be watched by a colleague. The main character thought that the From was probably watching his partner, and he knew that he was also excited, because he would need to stick to his preconceived role in battles. Drawing the guy's attention to herself, a blonde warrior girl named Fina noted that she was counting on him, and asked not to interfere with her during their battles, to which the hero turned to look at the girl and saw her face full of firm confidence. Suddenly, the hairdryer saw someone. At this moment, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas and a red-haired warrior girl named Cartier were standing not far from them, and a blonde warrior girl named Fina was looking at them with tension, which was also noticed by the main character who asked her about it. A blonde warrior girl named Fina drew his attention to two girls with black and red hair standing side by side, but the guy couldn't figure out who they were. In order to better understand what he saw, the hero activated the Enhanced Vision skill, and he immediately realized that one of the girls was already familiar to him. Immediately after that, the main character named Sakuya asked his partner about which of these two girls was called the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, from which the blonde warrior girl named Fina was surprised. not understanding how it was possible not to know this. She also explained that the one with red hair was called Cartier, and the dark-haired one was called Princess Phineas. Upon learning about this, the guy realized that it was the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas he had met earlier in Lindenhof after his return from the demon world, and was surprised by the fact that the girl was a princess. The young man also understood that nothing good would come out of the fact that they would meet, because she could get to know him and who he really is. While the main character named Sakuya was immersed in his thoughts, a blonde warrior girl named Fina added that she and a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas studied swordsmanship together as a child. But the hero still could not understand how such a coincidence of events and time happened in general. The young man also realized that he was talking to the princess as his friend at that time, but also that a girl like her should often see a lot of people. Among other things, the hero understood that he had met her in his adult state, and that at that moment, he looked completely different, and only hoped that he would not be recognized. Knowing that he'd only accidentally met and talked to with a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, the guy was sure that she did not even remember him. Sakuya's reasoning was interrupted by his partner and offered to return to the waiting area. At that moment, the announcer announced a request from representatives from each school to get ready. So far, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas and a red-haired warrior girl named Cartier noticed the departing girl Fenu and noted that she looked good and was full of enthusiasm. Speaking of the girl, the red-haired warrior girl Cartier mentioned her partner, who was just the last of her list of people. The main character named Sakuya, whom the princess was looking for, which she immediately became interested in. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl assumed that her friend had been chasing the man she wanted until now and offered to bring him to her. But she, worried, hastily refused. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas said she was curious to know about her old friend's partner, but he was a child and did not fit the description of the one she was looking for, because he was an adult and a completely different person. But the red-haired warrior girl Cartier suggested that the curse of the Demon King might have made him younger. What immediately took my mind was a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, who visually imagined that in this case the little protagonist named Sakuya was quite similar. But without thinking twice, she rejected these thoughts, laughing and deciding that this clearly could not have happened. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl also agreed with this, who suggested this possibility, after which she went towards the viewing areas. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, while not hurrying to follow her friend, thought that if the theory turned out to be true, she would clearly have some feelings for the boy who was going to participate in the tournament, which was announced at that moment. After the announcement of the start of the match, the crowd in the stands cheered enthusiastically, waiting for the battles themselves to begin, while a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas and a red-haired warrior girl Cartier waited for the hairdryer to come out to see how much she had changed. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas agreed with the red-haired warrior girl Cartier in this, just after which the blonde warrior girl named Fina and the main character named Sakuya came out against the first rivals, representatives from the Second Academy, Beast Tamers. The hero and his partner proudly emerged victorious from the battle between the Second and Third Academies, to general applause. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier, who was watching these events, told a friend that a blonde warrior girl named Fina met her expectations and won alone, and also noted that her partner did nothing in the battle, which, among other things, was not something special. But the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas noted that the blonde warrior girl named Fina and her partner, in her opinion, could be a much better team than the red-haired warrior girl Cartier thought, who was surprised by this thought. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas drew her friend's attention to what she couldn't notice during the match, but she couldn't figure out what she meant. The girl explained that as a red-haired warrior girl Cartier could remember, Fina had a bad habit of stopping thinking straight when her emotions got the better of her, and in such cases, she liked to make big sweeping attacks from the top point. Picking up on her thought, the red-haired Cartier warrior girl continued that because of her habit, opponents of the hairdryer could read her attacks more easily, which made her lose to opponents of lower rank, but still could not understand the essence. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas added that in one of the matches, a blonde warrior girl named Fina justified her style using her original technique worthy of the title of Princess of the Sword. And she asked me to pay attention to the old habits of the hairdryer. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier immediately realized after these words that the habits of the old days had really disappeared, which in the opinion of the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas meant that the blonde warrior girl named Fina strongly trusted her partner. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl replied that she really hadn't noticed any inherent errors in the hairdryer, but added that it didn't give them any idea of her partner's strength. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas said that the main character named Sakuya, whom she met, instilled in her a sense of trust, and only when they were together she could reveal her true self. And she felt the same way about this partner of the hairdryer. Upon hearing about this, the red-haired warrior girl Cardai and herself, not believing what she was thinking at that moment, assumed that her friend liked all the people who bore the name of the main character named Sakuya, but she hastily rejected this idea. The girl admitted that when she looked at the boy, she felt the same as when she met Sakuya himself, and claimed that she would never be able to forget this feeling. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl confirmed that she understood her feelings, but also noted that the guy, as it was seen, still had no abilities, to which the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas only waved away. Her friend also added that she had already told her that the main character named Sakuya was an adult, and he and Fina's partner were clearly different people with differences in appearance and age. Immediately after that, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas said out loud in surprise about something that, in her opinion, should not have happened. But the red-haired warrior girl Cartier did not immediately understand what was being said. Then a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas said that it was probably the curse of the demon lord that made Sakuya's body small, and sincerely hoped and believed that it was true. But the red-haired warrior girl Cartier asked not to take her recent joke so seriously. After that, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas felt very sad and disappointed and drooped a little, but her friend noticed it immediately. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier decided that there was no choice, and promised that when Fina's partner came closer to them, she would immediately evaluate him with the help of her eyes. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was delighted and directly blossomed with joy and smiled, remembering her friend's saint assessment skill, with which she could assess the strength of those she saw, even if someone was hiding it. Thus, the red-haired warrior girl Cartier counted on the fact that if, among other things, the main character named Sakuya turns out to be the one who really killed the Demon King, then, in her opinion, it did not matter if he became a little younger. A blonde warrior girl named Fina and the main character named Sakuya, sometime later, went to the next battle, the beginning of which two girls sitting nearby watched with special attention, which the hero noticed. He felt several stares from the rostrum, and while they hoped that he would come closer as soon as possible to evaluate him, the guy himself decided to try to stay as far away from them as possible. At this moment, a blonde warrior girl named Fina thought, looking at her partner, thinking that they had won in a team with him so far without any problems. But, in her opinion, everything was going too smoothly. She also thought that there was a possibility that it wasn't the enemies who were too weak, but rather that she and Sakuya were too strong. But rejecting these thoughts, realizing that you were thinking too much, a blonde warrior girl named Fina decided to focus on the enemy, just at the moment when the representative of the first academy began to be announced. Two students appeared in front of the guys armed with swords and a shield, in which the hero immediately recognized swordsmen with Gandharva shields. The main character named Sakuya knew that the only thing he and Fina were in danger of was being stunned by a shield, and assumed that his opponents wanted to buy themselves time for this by exhausting them. But also the main character named Sakuya knew that shields limited the view and movement of his carriers, and remembered that he had a skill that cancels stunning, after which he decided that he would disable at least one of the opponents when he was called. It was a blonde warrior girl named Fina, who told the hero that she could handle one-on-one, but not one-on-two, which was quite difficult for her, and counted on the help of her partner in this battle. The main character named Sakuya announced that he would definitely help her, and advised her not to be distracted, at this moment thinking that if a blonde warrior girl named Fina agreed with him, then the fight would be quite fast for them. Immediately after that, the guy, armed with a sword, stupidly ran screaming at the opponents, surprising Fenya, who did not expect this, and shouted that he should have followed the attack after permission. Their opponents were only happy with this arrangement, surprised that the guy had the courage to challenge the swordsman with the shield, and attacked him at the same second. Immediately after that, the main character named Sakuya depicted the perfect, in his opinion, fake stun that should have followed the attack of the swordsman, and he stood twitching from side to side. A moment later, the young man took and suddenly grabbed the shield of one of the opponents, greatly surprising him. After that, in a panic, he tried to throw the boy off the shield, who at that time was pleased with the convenience of hooking onto large shields. After a prolonged shaking, the main character named Sakuya thought that all this was useless, because a small shake would not have done anything to him, and the swordsman wondered how his opponent was holding onto the shield because he should have been stunned. The swordsman's partner was swearing at him at that moment, not understanding what he was doing. Fina carried the opponent out of the arena with one powerful blow, and his partner tried to hastily and loudly persuade her to stop, explaining that they were not ready. But he was also struck by the girl's blade, which brought the opponent to his knees, forcing him to let go of the shield. The main character named Sakuya was happy that everything was going just as he had planned. When the blonde warrior girl named Fina exhaled after the battle, the commentator loudly noted the steadfastness of the Gandharva shields, which the representatives of the Third Academy managed to break so easily, while the others were celebrating Sakuya's stupidity. Under the loud praise of the victory of the Third Academy, a blonde warrior girl named Fina ran up to the young man lying on the ground and asked about his condition. But he said that he was fine. The guy noted that he was trying to attract the attention of the enemy, which is why he ran forward, and in response, a blonde warrior girl named Fena only thought for a short time, looking at her partner's face. Immediately after that, the girl joyfully helped the hero get up, noting that he had enough strength to hold onto the shield while stunned, which is why the main character named Sakuya was glad that his partner's positive attitude helped his image. At that moment, their next opponents were announced, another pair, already from the First Academy, who entered the ring with a kind of weapon in their hands and a firm, confident gait. The opponents stood in front of the hero and the hairdryer, after which the main character named Sakuya drew attention to the staff peculiar to Earth magicians, as well as to the huge club in the hands of the second opponent, deciding that they had chosen a simple but effective strategy. Immediately after the start of the battle, a blonde warrior girl named Fina was going to carefully examine her opponents, but the main character named Sakuya once again rushed with stupid sweeping movements at the enemies, accompanied by loud screams. The girl tried to stop her partner, just at the moment when one of their opponents, who exceeded the size of the hero himself at least 3 times, swung at him with his huge mace. While the main character named Sakuya was running at the enemy and planning his next steps, the opponent with the staff of Earth magicians began to activate his spell, appealing to those living in the land of the dead to lend their power. It was at this moment that the main character named Sakuya decided that the right time had come when his opponents activated the skill of lifting the earth, deciding at the same time that they would cope with it. But the hero himself found this moment ideal. After that, the young man pretended to fall, to which the bully loudly announced that the guy had already bored him and swung at him for a finishing blow. While at that moment the magician did not understand how this whole situation happened, the giant once again shouted that the young man was tired of him, was going to bring down his blow on him, which, among other things, the main character named Sakuya was absolutely not afraid of. When the blow occurred, a blonde warrior girl named Fina was already running to the rescue of her partner. But the mace attack fell right next to the body of the young man lying on the ground, and according to his calculations, a blonde warrior girl named Fina was already running towards him. After seeing the results of what happened, not only the partner of the main character, but also his 2 opponents were extremely surprised that the blow missed and did not reach the target. The opponents of Farah and Sakuya realized that the situation in which they found themselves was clearly not something good, and they wanted to repeat what they had done until a dark silhouette appeared behind them, and a blonde warrior girl named Fena maliciously reminded them of herself. Before the guys had time to look around, wondering how someone managed to get behind them, the girl made a simple and swift attack, attacking them both and hitting each of the opponents on the spot. After that, the bully fell motionless, and the magician analyzed what had happened, realizing that the main character named Sakuya had managed to weaken his magic at some point. But immediately after these depressing words, the magician passed out and, following his partner, fell face down on the floor, and a blonde warrior girl named Fena noticed that the hero was still lying quietly not far from the enemies. After they gained the upper hand, the commentator announced another victory for the Third Academy, while the crowd predicted that they would win the championship. The stands were delighted with their easy victory in just one blow over such a huge man as their opponent. while the main character named Sakuya was joyfully enjoying the fact that he could not get enough of his role, which he was playing at that moment. The crowd noted that Fina had a terrible partner and that she was so useless while the young man himself lay quietly on the ground, actually rejoicing that he was being mocked, because it meant that he was doing everything right. Getting up from the ground, the hero reflected that in any case, his plan worked even better than any of his expectations. Because an earth mage could most likely use the earthlifting skill to block their movements, and then the bully could defeat them with one blow. But nevertheless, this fact did not mean that they could not be approached before they themselves used magic to block movements. Meanwhile, the hero realized that he did not want to risk revealing his power. Thus, in their recent battle, the earth-lifting skill had to stop right in front of the big guy, which is why the main character named Sakuya accelerated before activating magic to bring his opponent into the area of action. Getting up from the ground, the hero headed towards his partner, reasoning that he did not expect an attempt to fix everything at the end from the wizard. Approaching the hairdryer, the main character named Sakuya awkwardly scratched his head and said that they had coped, which his partner confirmed, but the guy had a feeling that something was wrong, which he asked about, although a blonde warrior girl named Fina said that nothing like that had happened. The girl was thinking about the fact that in the last 2 battles her partner rushed at the enemy, but in this way gave her the opportunity to attack, which is why she was still full of strength and willingness to win. A blonde warrior girl named Fina decided to recall recent events, because even from the very first day of the young man's admission to school, Gokuda had his eye on Sakuya, which was clearly not an exaggeration. Thinking about it, the thought came to Fina that everything that the hero had done up to now was calculated by him, because only one wrong move was enough for a severe injury. The girl thought about how long her partner would be able to keep his calculations and actions when so many people were watching him, and even doubted whether there was a person in the world capable of something like that. Also, the blonde warrior girl named Fina understood that she did not have enough information to draw conclusions, but also realized that if her partner laid in the same spirit, it would be beneficial for both of them. Gathering her strength, the girl decided that they would not stop there. While the main character named Sakuya knew at that moment that everything would be fine, because the blonde warrior girl named Fina was the best and most supportive partner. They were watched from afar by a red-haired warrior girl, Cartier, who activated her eyes for the Saint assessment skill. And she immediately boasted to a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas that she was able to evaluate Sakuya. Surprised by this, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was excited and immediately asked what the boy's assessment was, and what actually happened to him at all, after which the red-haired warrior girl Cartier voiced her assessment as unconventional. A moment later, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was surprised that the assessment was non-standard, and the red-haired warrior girl Cartier confirmed that this was her assessment of the saint. But her friend did not understand what exactly this result meant. The red-haired warrior girl Cardai didn't think for long, and said that her skill was the ability to assess someone's strength. In a word, and the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas immediately guessed that in this case, everything depended on interpretation. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier confirmed this, noting that the goblin, under her assessment, would be a weakling. Vanite would be an equal, and Marissa would be the strongest. Immediately after listing these people, the red-haired warrior Cartier girl moved on to the one who received the strongest title of Destroyer, immediately becoming interested in her friend. This destroyer creature was a Vakion, a water dragon living off the coast of Lyrasis. After telling the red-haired warrior girl Cartier about this, she moved on to the recent assessment of the non-standard boy, which was very exciting for the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier said that the rating of non-standard had the weakest rating, which put the boy even below the Goblin Lord. Her friend did not lose her positive attitude and noted that such an assessment, depending on the interpretation, could mean something much stronger than they could even imagine. While the red-haired warrior girl Cartier was surprised by this thought, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas paved the way, noting that the main character named Sakuya could be beyond their ability level, and therefore hiding his strength supported the girl Fanu, while remaining in the shadows. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier couldn't believe it, because she was sure that no human would be capable of such a thing. But the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas drew her attention to the fact that the main character named Sakuya was the winner of the Demon King. Thus, his achievements were a well-known fact, and if he was capable of defeating the Demon King, then it would not be strange to be superior to Marissa and Ivakian. While the red-haired warrior girl Cartier still doubted this theory, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas added that if the rating of non-standard would be higher than Destroyer, then the rumor that Astarte was with Sakuya became more convincing. After all this, the red-haired warrior girl Cartier admitted that such a possibility really existed, and the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was joyfully convinced that Fina's partner was the one she was looking for. But the next second, the red-haired warrior Cartier girl stood up after her friend and stopped her from rushing to the boy. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas demanded not to stop her, because she wanted to come to the guy and immediately confess her feelings to him. But the red-haired warrior girl Cartier stopped her, reminding her that the game was still going on. But the girl couldn't wait. She was sure that while she was waiting, the main character named Sakuya could disappear again. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl did not give up asking her friend to calm down. Noting that if the boy really was the same Sakuya, he could begin to despise the girl who interrupted his match to confess her feelings. Upon hearing about this, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas stopped abruptly and realized that this could really happen, which was confirmed by the red-haired warrior girl Cartier, noting that she would be thought of as strange, and the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas calmed down, regretting that she could not contain her excitement. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier also reminded that, among other things, if a blonde warrior girl named Fina and the main character named Sakuya reach the finals, then the guy will see how good the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was, which, in her opinion, was much more romantic, and the girl supported her idea. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl exhaled dissatisfied with the fact that her friend had to be so calmed, but she sat down in anticipation of what the main character named Sakuya would do in the next match, and the red-haired warrior Cartier girl asked who their next opponent was. At that moment, the deputy chairman of the First Academy and his partner were announced. The magician and the swordswoman, even in the match, saw only each other in front of them, confessing their feelings. The main character named Sakuya analyzed the pair of swordsman and wizard and was sure that the level of coordination between the two would be much higher. And according to Fina, it was clear that this couple had caused a lot of trouble last year, because the girl was a fencing master and the guy was a pretty skilled magician. Also, a blonde warrior girl named Fina added that the more important thing was the strange coordination between their opponents, but the hero doubted that they were so strong that they could create fears for his partner. A blonde warrior girl named Fina asked Sakuya not to act alone this time, which he agreed to and seriously thought about. The guy knew that the combination of the wizard and the owner of the sword was capable of not winning in one blow, and assumed that their tactics would be similar to those of previous opponents, and their level of coordination should make them difficult. But this time, the hero decides to start from a wait-and-see position, believing that it will be difficult to force the opponent to play by his own rules. Thus, the more unpleasant the opponent was, the more benefit Sakuya's side would get from his role. After a few moments, the opponents prepared to attack. The girl screamed and threw her axe at the girl, Feng and Sakuya, thus forcing them to dodge and move away from each other. And the young man immediately realized that they first wanted to separate them. The guy understood that if this continued, the enemies would easily deal with them. But it did not end there. Looking back, the main character named Sakuya noticed how his partner was calling him, at the same time barely defending herself from the wizard's spells, and realized that the magician was greatly delaying the girl Fanu. In the next instant, a girl from the opposing team knocked back the main character named Sakuya with a powerful blow, leaving him no choice from top to bottom. And tearing the young man away from his partner, she rushed to attack the girl Fanu, but the main character named Sakuya expected this. And at the same moment, the wizard cast a sleep spell on the hero, who, despite his stability and the fact that he was still standing on his feet, noticed that the effect was not easy to resist. A girl rushed towards the hairdryer with the intention of attacking, after which they quickly clashed with swords, and the swordswoman suddenly gave a sign to her partner. The guy, having previously made sure that the main character named Sakuya was still in a state of sleep, and immediately rushed to help his girlfriend. Immediately after that, the magician activated the spell on the staff, planning to bring some benefit to the battle between the girls. But at that moment, the main character named Sakuya smiled maliciously. A moment later, at the tip of the staff, the spell failed at its beginning and disintegrated, with a spark, amid the bewildered screams of the wizard, who did not understand how it happened. In fact, the main character named Sakuya, who was standing nearby, secretly imposed silence on him. After that, he decided to leave the rest to his partner, who at that moment crossed blades with the enemy. A blonde warrior girl named Fina and her opponent had problems under the grinding of their swords, while the girly opposing team asked if the main character named Sakuya was in a close relationship with her opponent. But a blonde warrior girl named Fina immediately explained that they were not that close, but her opponent was sure that she was only hiding her concern, adding that her infatuation was noticeable at first glance. Upon hearing about this, not only the blonde warrior girl named Fina herself, but also the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and the red-haired warrior girl Cartier, who were watching from afar, were surprised and stunned by these words. So far, the girl continued and told Fina to admit if the main character named Sakuya really liked her, because, in her opinion, girls had to be honest. But a blonde warrior girl named Fina at this moment, losing patience and gathering her strength, powerfully cut the air tangentially from bottom to top, demanding silence from the enemy. But the girl, after dodging the blow, noted that a blonde warrior girl named Fina showed her strength and was clearly cooking something, which Sakuya's partner and he immediately felt. The girl, saying that she expected this action from the hairdryer, used the sword skill, the flow of the Urals, leaning on the girl with great force. She was surprised by such a force at this moment, making sure that it really was the Jural stream, the art of the sword that allows you to use only powerful attacks, and realized that they would not have time to counterattack in this situation. At that moment, a smokescreen formed at the point of their battle, in which the girls froze in the air and the main character named Sakuya quietly crept towards them, using the skills of the removable earth and smokescreen, which, in his opinion, were perfect. Thus, at first, the main character named Sakuya planned to slightly bounce off the wooden sword, and then use the shard, and while Fina's gaze slowly moved in his direction, he returned to his original place. In the next second, the sword flew out of the swordswoman's hands high up and broke into fragments there, leaving her in disbelief. While the girl realized that the blonde warrior girl named Fina had not even touched her sword and could not understand how it all came out at all, the main character named Sakuya shouted a call to his partner to start action. A blonde warrior girl named Fina immediately realized that this was her opportunity and swiftly attacked her opponent, finally defeating her. Seeing this, her partner rushed to her, and bending down to her, with regret visible on his face, announced the loss of their team. To the applause of the crowd, the blonde warrior girl named Fina still did not understand how this turning point in their battle turned out, and from the stands, there were also surprised exclamations about dodging the sword and how it shattered into fragments. Everyone expected that the final would not be easy. The main character named Sakuya ran up to his partner at that moment, rejoicing that he was perfectly playing the role of a shadow. And although a little aggressive, the result was clearly good. A blonde warrior girl named Fena worried about Sakuya's condition, and he apologized for falling asleep. But the girl praised that he was holding up well, because that's why they were partners. The guy thought that she would reprimand him for his behavior during the battle, but only accepted her praise while the girl stood silently immersed in her thoughts. A blonde warrior girl named Fina was analyzing the fight they had just had, and how her opponent's mighty sword was very close to her sword, because it almost cut it down. But a blonde warrior girl named Fina managed to notice the movement of the shadow after that, after which something bounced off the sword and shattered, which was clearly an anomaly, because it could only happen in one case. This would only be possible if someone flew between the girls with incredible speed and bounced off the sword, smashed it, and then calmly returned to the starting position, remembering the speed that no one sees. The girl remembered her first battles with Sakuya and some other moments, and assumed that then he was the very shadow. A blonde warrior girl named Fina doubted that the main character named Sakuya could have been much more skilled than herself from the very beginning, and thought that he could support her from the shadows. She also didn't know why the guy was hiding his powers, but if it was true and he continued to help her and work quietly, she was going to repay him for his actions. When they win in the final round, the girl would like to hear his arguments and enthusiastically raised her sword in front of her. And while the main character, named Sakuya himself, did not understand what she was thinking, a blonde warrior girl named Fina remembered the from. Of the two girls who were sitting in the stands from afar at this time, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was thinking about what Fina's opponent had told her during the match, and believing that she was too optimistic, she assumed that a blonde warrior girl named Fina and the main character named Sakuya were partners in terms of closer intimacy. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas thought that a blonde warrior girl named Fena had chosen him as a partner because of his abilities, and was stunned to lose the opportunity after learning that Fena had a romantic interest in Sakuya, and believed that it could be mutual. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas did not think about such a possibility, because the main character named Sakuya was younger than Finny, and understood that they had no reason for a bad relationship, and the level of trust hinted that there really was a close relationship between them. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl asked her friend to calm down, but she immediately decided after a short thought that it was a matter of rivalry, as well as a matter of love. A friend to the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas did not believe that she believed in this provocation, but she was sure that she had no shortage of rivals, and she was ready to defeat the fangirl both in battle and in love. At this time, the main character named Sakuya and a blonde warrior girl named Fina were preparing for battle. Sometime later, it was finally time for the final match, and the announcer announced the beginning of another confrontation between the academies, during which a blonde warrior girl named Fina and the main character named Sakuya met with a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and a red-haired warrior girl named Cartier princess named Phineas, and a red-haired warrior girl named Cartier. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was not going to lose to Fina either in a sword fight or in their love, and was ready to do everything possible to win and tell Sakuya about her feelings. The blonde warrior girl named Fina was inspired by the fact that she had gone so far and wanted to justify the wishes of the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and thus say goodbye to her past. After that, she asked Sakuya to fight with the red-haired warrior girl Cartier, to buy her time to fight with the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, which the guy accepted, and the girls moved to meet each other. Both the blonde warrior girl named Fina and the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas had serious and ready expressions on their faces, exchanging glances. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier asked her partner if she would take on Sakuya, but the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas refused, because she planned to fight with Fina, because she did not think that she would be able to raise her sword against the young man. Immediately after that, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas approached her rival, and their formidable auras collided when a blonde warrior girl named Fena said that after a previously broken heart, she sharpened her sword, found a partner, and stood there at that moment in the final of the competition. Raising her sword above her head and thus preparing for the attack, the girl announced that she would use all her skills to revive and surpass herself. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas nodded and announced that she had long wanted to meet and fight with Fina, and was glad that this day had finally come, and wanting to answer the girl's challenge. Their tense conversation was watched from afar by the main character named Sakuya, who was interrupted by a red-haired girl warrior Cartier, announcing that she would be his opponent in this fight. The young man, having prepared his sword, was thinking about the important match that his partner was waiting for, and realized that she would not need his help. The blonde warrior girl named Fina herself, at this moment, saying that she still had a lot to say, decided to start a fight by calling a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas to battle, to which she, dodging the attack, cheerfully agreed. The next attack of the hairdryer was carried out from top to bottom, but despite its power, it did not hit the dodging dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, who mentally praised the technique, noting that something more was needed. A blonde warrior girl named Fina was also glad to fight, and noted for herself the constant dexterity of her old rival. But she also knew that she herself was already completely different compared to the past. After which she attacked, shouting about her victory. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas once again dodged the attack and was about to attack in response, to which the blonde warrior girl named Fina was ready with all her appearance showing readiness to accept the attack. After that, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas rushed towards the enemy with lightning speed and used the blow of a dancing butterfly. But a blonde warrior girl named Fina was already waiting for this moment, after which there was a flash. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was clearly surprised by what happened, because the girl repelled her attack and moved her to the side, while maintaining a confident expression on her face. After that, the girls retreated a couple of steps, and the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas praised how the blonde warrior girl named Fina thwarted her attack. But she also noted the same thing about the opponent's sword and urged her to continue. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was also ready to continue, because this short exchange of blows was not enough for her. After that, the girls crossed swords again in an even fiercer fight. Blows from both sides rained down with lightning speed, while the combatants managed to have a dialogue about how they used to compete in a friendly way and fought for days on end, as well as about the changes of the hairdryer after the Third Academy. And a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and a blonde warrior girl named Fena, confidently and enthusiastically looking into each other's eyes in the middle of their powerful fight. Both had the same desire and followed it relentlessly, to win and never lose in this battle. Just a few moments later, the crowd with loud cheers asked the girl to stand up, because the victory of the Third Academy depended on her, and many in the stands were rooting for her. The girl, out of breath, sat on her knees on the ground and tried to get up, realizing that she could not afford to lose, while the commentator began a 10-second countdown. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was looking at her from the side, who, despite also losing her breath, was still standing in place after their last encounter. And a blonde warrior girl named Fina was very angry at the situation. The girl was trying to stand up, saying that she had to win, and while the commentator was counting the 4th second, she looked back at Sakuya. The guy was still fighting with the red-haired warrior girl Cartier, thus keeping the promise made to his partner, who could not get up. And the countdown had already reached the 6th second when the blonde warrior girl named Fina shouted loudly that she could not believe in such an outcome. The girl once again made an attempt to stand up, leaning on her sword, but it did not go any further, and the blonde warrior girl named Fina fell powerlessly to the floor, letting go of the sword, after which she began to cry, feeling hatred for what was happening at that moment. Meanwhile, the commentator announced the end of the 10-second countdown, and, accordingly, the elimination of Fina from the battle, while she could not even pick up a sword. Meanwhile, the main character named Sakuya realized that without a leading player in this situation, he was unable to do anything, and regretted his lack of help from the shadows, and then decided to give up before the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas would recognize him. After thinking about it, he folded his sword and knelt down, which surprised the red-haired warrior Cartier girl, and the crowd roared from the stands, to the measured 10-second countdown of the commentator. The crowd did not want the guy to give up so easily, but he was not interested in winning, and despite the opinion that only he could fight, the guy understood that there was no point in this, and continued to wait for the end of the countdown. His acquaintances from the Third Academy also shouted at him to get up, and did not want such an end, even reminding him of the victory over the bandits, which the main character named Sakuya remembered, but a little differently than his friend. The red-haired warrior girl Cartier praised him for his decision to surrender and sheathed her sword while the countdown counted the 6th second, and the crowd tried to support the hero as much as possible with loud noise. The young man was pleased with the general support, but he was sure that in this situation he could not stand up, after which he looked back at his partner at the 8th second of the countdown. The girl, sitting on the ground, was crying, and looking at him, she apologized that the guy had read his lips and was stunned. A blonde warrior girl named Fina, addressing the hero with flowing tears and regret, said that she fell first, despite the fact that she took a promise from Sakuya and tried to wipe her tears with her hand. Seeing this, the guy tried to tell the hairdryer to stop crying, and while she was trying to wipe away her tears, the hero thought that the girl should never cry again. After thinking about it, the main character named Sakuya gathered his strength and picked up a sword, and after standing up decided to fight for the last time, right before the end of the 10-second countdown. Sometime later, after losing the Fina, the main character named Sakuya changed his mind about giving up, seeing his partner's tears, and stood up with the intention of fighting not for himself, but for someone. Standing in front of the red-haired warrior Cartier girl, he provoked her, and she was surprised that her opponent dared to get up from his knees again, and was already grabbing her sword, which was sheathed. But the main character named Sakuya in the next second took out the emblem of the demon Astarte, sealed with the help of his powers, showing that he had changed his mind about giving up and was ready for action. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl did not immediately understand what her opponent was planning to do, and directly asked him about it, but the young man the next moment began to recite a spell in another language. Immediately after that, a thick dark aura spread from him in all directions, which forced the red-haired warrior Cartier girl, who was wondering about the unknown language she heard at that moment, to retreat. At the same time, the main character named Sakuya continued to summon Astarte without stopping to cast a spell. Moments later, he finally activated the Devil's Formula skill. Thus, the young man was sure that even if he won this fight for the sake of Fina, then thanks to the peculiarities of Astarte's magic, no one remembered him as the decisive role of this battle. All the people in the ring at that moment fixed their eyes on the hero. And not only the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas could not understand what was happening, but also the red-haired warrior girl Cartier was at a loss. But each of them, including a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas and a blonde warrior girl named Fina with a tear-stained face, did not believe that the end of the battle was not near. And the main character named Sakuya looked significantly at his partner. After she noticed his look and apologized, the guy abruptly turned towards the red-haired girl warrior Cartier and announced that he had bad news for her. So far, the girl did not understand what he was talking about. The main character named Sakuya said that she was no longer going to play with them, and an aura soared around his body, as well as the sword, forcing the red-haired girl warrior Cartier to move back. She didn't understand why she felt fear from someone who, in her estimation, should have been weaker than an ordinary goblin. But she noticed his attitude, and also felt the woman standing behind him, who scared her. The girl caught her gaze, but after a moment she thought about it and could not figure out what exactly she saw. After looking closely and considering the situation, the red-haired warrior Cartier girl decided that as it turned out there was no one behind her opponent, and she concluded that there was panic magic that confused her. Grinning, the red-haired warrior Cartier girl drew the young man's attention to herself and announced that she was the second heiress of the Jural fencing school, and was sure that the main character named Sakuya could not even compare with her. The young man was not greatly surprised or offended in any way. But the red-haired warrior Cartier girl continued, noting that she appreciated the guy's skills, adding that she could determine the approximate strength of the target only by looking at it. The main character named Sakuya only grinned after these words, and while the girl was asking why the guy was laughing, but after that he suddenly disappeared from the point where he was standing, and the red-haired girl warrior Cartier could not even see where the main character named Sakuya was standing. Noticing that he stopped in his movements, elusive to her gaze, at a place nearby, the red-haired warrior girl Cartier asked what these actions of the guy meant, but he only announced the end of their battle. The others were surprised that the young man got to the red-haired girl warrior Cartier so quickly, and even she herself couldn't believe that just a second ago, the main character named Sakuya was standing in another place and didn't take a single step. The hero at that moment said that as he understood it, the assessment given to him by the saint could be regarded as a compliment. After that, he attacked his opponent with force, throwing the girl far into the air. She couldn't believe that the guy was capable of something like this, and immediately thought about the assessment she received after using the saint assessment skill. The red-haired warrior girl Cardai, falling, realized that the young man could be much stronger than Evakion, the water dragon of fate, who was the most powerful dragon in the world. Waking up from her thoughts, the girl realized that she was in the process of falling and would soon fall right on her head. But in the end, she was caught by the main character named Sakuya, embarrassing the girl, who at that time immediately thought of her friend. After that, the young man worried about the condition of his opponent, whom he was holding in his arms. The red-haired warrior, Cartier girl, even more embarrassed and blushing, demanded that the guy put her down, and he calmly lowered her to the ground, noted that the girl was unarmed anyway, and suggested that she finish until she understood what he was talking about. The red-haired Cartier warrior girl looked at her right hand and was surprised to realize that the sword she was holding was completely destroyed and only the hilt remained, while the girl stared at her broken weapon in disbelief. The commentator announced the end of the 10-second countdown, and at the same time the loss of the red-haired girl warrior Cartier, after which the crowd in the stands cheered enthusiastically. The main character named Sakuya stood confidently and firmly and looked into the eyes of a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, who did not know what to feel and do in the situation, until a blonde warrior girl named Fina nearby realized that it was the main character named Sakuya who put his hands in some events. The guy, looking back at his defeated partner, turned his head back to the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and with a light smile, announced that he did not want to fight her. While the girl did not understand what he was leading to and why he behaved like that, the young man put it down, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time, and apologized that he did not immediately recognize her as the princess from the Arabi's wedding. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was startled and surprised by these sudden words. But the main character named Sakuya continued by adding that a lot had happened to him, as well as a sudden rejuvenation, but said that they would talk later when the opportunity arose. The girl immediately threw the sword aside at that moment, and while the main character named Sakuya was slightly tense from this, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, repeating his name, jumped into his arms. The princess got her eyes wet, and kneeling down, she hugged the hero, who was stunned by her behavior right in the middle of the battle. In fact, the girl always adored him, which she confessed. The main character named Sakuya at this moment wanted to talk to her first, but a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was against it. She took his hands and putting them on her shoulders, pleased, asked him never to let her go again. All the stands were extremely surprised, so much so that everyone hung in silence until the red-haired warrior Cartier girl, watching this picture, realized that the princess again behaved as was her nature, and a dark aura was gathering over the arena at that moment. At that moment, anxiety reigned in the arena, and a voice in another language began to come out of nowhere, which was immediately noticed by a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, who assumed that it was Sakuya's voice, but he admitted that it was not so. The guy instantly assumed, not believing what was happening, that the Astarte medallion was to blame, and asked the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas to stay away from him, because to feel that it was not so. But the girl did not want to let go of the guy and only clung to him more tightly, after which the shock force was released from the medallion, pushing away a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas. And then a column of black aura soared up. Astarte burst out and screamed furiously while the stunned protagonist, named Sakuya, tried to figure out what was going on at that moment, not knowing why the demoness subordinate to them came out. From this loud scream, everyone present, including the red-haired warrior girl Cartier and the girl Fenu, as well as the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, lying on the ground nearby, were forced to cover their ears, leaving the guy alone in the center of events. The main character named Sakuya understood that he had to stop her and began to cast a spell in the language of demons, but even Astarte did not answer him. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, at that moment still covering her ears, heard someone next to Sakuya telling her to stay away from him, after which the guy ran to her aid. But Astarte emitted a strong shockwave with a scream. The main character named Sakuya did not understand what was happening to her, and realized that not only the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, but also the rest of those present at this competition might not be able to withstand such pressure, and realized what he should do. He told the referee to start the countdown, wanting to end this match, after which he announced the victory of the Third Academy. Immediately after that, the main character named Sakuya took off and deactivated the medallion with Astarte sealed in it, after which the demoness finally calmed down and closed her eyes again. After she disappeared into the previously summoned smoke, the young man put the medallion away in a spatial storage, and a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas approached the one lying on the floor. Sitting down next to her, he recalled how she had said that she had liked him for a long time and assumed that because of such seriousness her feelings had to be sincere, because she confessed them in spirit. But the main character named Sakuya thought that this could not be, because he did not believe that the princess could be interested in him, and there was a possibility that Astarte manipulated her with magic. Rising from his knees, the young man, believing that soon his formula of the devil of Astarte would begin to change the memories of everyone around him, decided to wait a little. So sometime later, the Third Academy became the winner of the United Schools Festival that year, and a blonde warrior girl named Fina stood in first place on the pedestal, holding a dagger up, leaving a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas in second place. Thus, as a result of the formula of the devil of Astarte, the memory of Sakuya at the festival almost disappeared, and a blonde warrior girl named Fina, as everyone thought, took with her a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and a red-haired warrior girl Cartier to the limits of the ring, leaving the hero behind. The guy who was not taken seriously stood his ground to the end, which is why he and his partner got the victory. This result seemed good to Sakuya, but he decided to be more careful in the future. After that, the guy drew attention to the girls cheerfully discussing something nearby. A dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas turned to the hairdryer and said that she would like to discuss something with her. When she became interested, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas discussed Veneta, who had previously been suspended and also expelled from the Jural fencing school, after hearing what a blonde warrior girl named Fina immediately remembered that she was an heiress. The red-haired girl warrior Cartier added on her own that you have been expelled from school because of the fact of inheriting Veneta, because she was not the first to commit misconduct. Thus, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas decided to say what she wanted, in other words, and announced that a new vacant place had appeared in the line of succession, and they wanted to choose someone for this place. Upon hearing about this, a blonde warrior girl named Fina couldn't believe what they were going to tell her, but a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas said anyway that she wanted this vacant seat to be occupied by a blonde warrior girl named Fina. The girl was surprised, and the red-haired warrior girl Cartier confirmed that this was their serious intention, after which the blonde warrior girl named Fina burst into tears, realizing that a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas needed her. The girls who saw this reaction immediately took the girl Feng by the hands and confirmed her thoughts while she continued to cry with joy. But the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas had other news. She wanted her friend to take up the position of a royal guard specialist along with the red-haired warrior girl Cartier, surprising the Feng girl even more. The girl agreed to this, due to the fact that the position was one of the best opportunities for a swordsman, which could not be simply dismissed. Upon hearing about this, the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas broke into a smile and clarified whether the blonde warrior girl named Finna agreed. But she, catching the same mood, said that she would take office with pleasure. Thus, the red-haired warrior Cartier girl wanted to start transferring hair dryers to the first academy, but she froze in place after a little thought and then apologized and asked to wait for the transfer. The dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas was worried, assuming that something was wrong. But the blonde warrior girl named Fina just wanted to thank the man from the third academy who helped her move on. After telling about this, she once again firmly asked to delay the translation. But the dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas in response, exhaling in a relaxed manner, agreed, to which the blonde warrior girl named Fina was grateful. The red-haired warrior Cartier girl at the end of the conversation, with an inspired look, asked if this same man was a guide to Fina. But when she heard this, she was as confused as possible and immediately began to deny this fact. After that, a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas called the girl, and when she looked back at her, she admitted that they were rivals. But a blonde warrior girl named Fina was happy and agreed to this. Watching this from afar, the main character named Sakuya realized that everything had been decided, and stretching assumed that the prepared future at the hairdryer would be a good opportunity for her, because a lot had happened. But the young man himself did not know what to do now, because next spring he had exams and he had to try. But he was also inspired by the opportunity to become an adventurer, and he could not choose. But the next second, someone called him from behind. It was his classmates who were joyfully running towards him, inspired by the victory from the academy. The main character named Sakuya waved at them, surprised that they were watching his match, which was actually not surprising because there was nothing else to watch. But at that moment, a blonde warrior girl named Fina took his hand. She suggested that he at least say hello to a dark-haired warrior princess named Phineas, and the main character named Sakuya understood that among all the choices, he at least had a blonde warrior girl named Fina, and waving to the others, he realized that he had already decided on the answer to his question. While a blonde warrior girl named Fina was taking him to the girls, the young man was thinking that he still had to play his role in this academy.